Hi, and welcome to Homo Ludens, the show on history and board games. Tonight, we are playing a game that I wanted to do a show about for a long time, Nevsky. I am not usually a big fan of medieval war games, even if I enjoy a few like Crusader X or Command and Color Medieval. But the idea of a game about medieval warfare on an operational level by the creator of the Coin series got me very excited as soon as I learned about it a few years ago. So I decided tonight to have a couple of guests with me to do a nice teach and play session. And first of all, I needed someone to play with. So it just so happens that a few months ago, I started chatting with a guy named Sam, that's from the YouTube channel Lord of the Board, about helping him pick up some games to get into wargaming. I also discovered Sam's channel that I think is really awesome, and I would definitely recommend going and have a look, covering mostly heavier kind of board games and a lot of root. It's really cool, and I added the link in the description. But now that I had a player, I needed a teacher, and for this, one choice was obvious: Volko, the designer of the game, which is more or less a co-host of this show at this point. So first of all, I would like to thank everyone for joining us tonight, and I'm super excited to introduce our guest, Sam and Volko. Hi to both of you.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
How's it
How are you
going?
two? How are you two doing?
Very well here.
I'm doing great.
Do you feel ready, Sam?
Not at all, but I'm very excited. So I think the enthusiasm will make up for my not readiness.
Yeah, I think it would be fine because I think that there is a challenge for Sam because it's first a new game and a new type of game, but also the additional extra challenge that we like to have here is also the discovery of the world-renowned software Vassal that can be a bit daunting to start with, but we did figure it out just before the stream. I think it would be fine. It's a bit dry compared to TTS, but in the end, it has a lot of advantages, and I'm sure you'll fall in love with the system before the end of the show, Sam. But
Well, unlike you, Fred, I'm actually super into medieval warfare. So this was like when I heard that this was a series, I was like super stoked and immediately bought this game without even knowing anything about it. I just straight up bought it. I'm
and
so excited.
did you have the opportunity to have a quick look at the rules? Did you try to have a
Yes.
play? Yeah.
Yeah, so I tried to play a solo game with myself, and I made a couple of turns, but then I had to stop. So, and I've also watched many videos over and over again. I still feel like I need a rules teach, but I definitely am like I know kind of how it works, if that makes sense.
Okay, good. And by the way, if you're looking at that video and you're wondering about a pure rules teach video that only gets into the rules, there is one recommendation that I have, and that's Jean-Michel Grosje's rules teach. He does usually an amazing job on every rules teach that he does. He did a great series on Empire of the Sun, and I think his series on Nevsky is just perfect. And I think that you, Volko, also like his work quite a lot.
It's outstanding. Yeah, it's the best one that's out there, I think.
And I think he also has that very particular trait that makes it really also appealing is that perfect French accent, like just
So sophisticated.
exactly
He also
sweetens the deal. Yeah,
he also goes over a lot of edge cases, which is kind of nice. Like he does the full teach. I learned Oath from him as well, actually. He
Yeah.
did a really good series on Oath, which is another really kind of
And
complex board game.
something else he manages to do is he teaches it in the order that that you need it, right? The edge cases are later in. You get the core of the thing, how it runs, and then you get, and what about this situation? And he does it in the context of a scripted playthrough. So it's quite brilliant.
yeah. And the other thing that I really like is that he usually makes those player aids on the side that go well with the videos.
Yes.
I think it's just an amazing job. So yeah, kudos to him and a lot of love to you, Jean-Michel, if you are watching this video at some point. But that's great. So super excited about tonight. But maybe before we jump straight into it, I had a couple of questions for my guests tonight. First of all, you, Sam, maybe you can present yourself a bit to for the viewers here that don't necessarily know your channel, just what you're doing on YouTube, what kind of games you're covering, and how you got maybe into board games overall.
Yeah. So So Sam, also known as Lord of the Board, and the YouTube channel is also called Lord of the Board, mostly because the whole kind of focus of the channel was to fill in a really large gap in the board game community where there's not really strategy guides on games. My whole channel likes to celebrate when you play a game multiple times and you learn new things. And I'm always trying to encourage people to instead buy the new game and just play that one that you already have your shelf again and again and again, because you start discovering so many other things after you've played it, 10, 15, 20. In my case with Root, 200 and something times. I've played it too many times now. And so I started making strategy guides really with Root, the board game by Cole Worley. He's one of my favorite designers of all time. And from there, I've kind of just slowly made a couple of different strategy series. I'm still kind of discovering what games I like doing strategy series on, but mostly right now it's going to be focused on like asymmetric positions, because those are my favorite types of games with just kind of like a lot of asymmetry. And I ended up stumbling on Fred's channel at some point because wargaming has always been something that interested me. I'm a huge history buff. I just really love anything historical. Also, the wargaming, I mean, Root is kind of a coin game, just like the spirit of a coin game, really. And I didn't realize that there was other games like that out there. So when I saw Fred's channel, I started kind of diving into that, ended up reaching out to him and got some really good recommendations. And now I'm like 4 war games in roughly. This will be the 5th one that I'm playing, and I'm really stoked. So it's been great.
And it was really fun to have this discussion with you and try to figure out what would be a good fit. The thing that I really liked about our discussion is that you didn't fall into the trap of just taking a game because it's supposed to be beginner friendly, but actually going with how you felt about the topic and how attracted you were to it. And usually I think it's the best way to do it is go with the passion, because it will go a long way for motivating someone to get to learn rules that might be unusual and everything. And I think it was really cool. And also the range that you went for, a lot of very different games. I think that was actually quite interesting. Just really this will to explore broadly. I think that was really cool. And how has it been going so far? So you say you're 4 games in. How has your experience been overall?
So far, I adore Maria. I think that game is so much fun. And also, I can see why Falling Sky was a lot of Cole's inspiration for Root. Now, having played it a couple of times, I am like, oh my word, this action economy system is so similar. And so it was really easy for me to kind of dive into that position. The Roman player is essentially the Marquise de Cat. And I mean, it was just too obvious. I was just like, are you kidding me? This is basically the Marquise de Cat. And that made me really excited. So I really, really like Falling Sky. And then I also played Battle Line, which is kind of a lighter one, but that one we've been playing, me and my wife, a lot, and that one is super fun. Pendragon, I have still failed to get to the table fully. I've played it technically a solo game, but here's the thing. I much prefer that theme over a lot of the other ones because I'm more of like a medieval, and I like medieval themes more so than like World War 1 or 2 or something like that. I'm definitely more into the knights and swords and all that stuff. So I obviously Nevsky, it was just that was the first like auto buy without even your word, Fred. I was just like, I just bought it and then was like, hey, so this Levy Campaign system, what's this all about? That was pretty fun.
And mentioning Maria, which is also and I love Maria too. It's also a pre-industrial operational level game, maneuver of armies that includes logistics, and it does it in such an accessible way. And I think if you look at the Lord pieces in Nevsky, they will look familiar from Maria, not coincidental.
Yeah, they do quite a lot. And maybe Sam, I have an offer for you. We can chat about it afterwards. But Pendragon has been a game that I've been willing to play for a long time right now. Morgan and I have been discussing for a long time about having her on the show, and we never really found the right moment or the right opportunity to do this. Maybe I could convince her to come and do a teach and play. We just have to find a couple of other players, and we could have the experience of having the first play, a multiplayer play.
I would love that.
I think that could be fun. I will send a quick note to Morgan to see if she would be up for a rules teach. That could be super fun. Cool. So But back to tonight's game. Tonight we're playing Nevsky, and we're playing something, a bit of a specific thing for Nevsky. So a new scenario that you created, Volko, quick start scenario that wasn't in the base box, but that you added. And I was wondering, why did you came up with that quick start scenario?
A challenge with learning this system, especially if you haven't played, soon we will have multiple volumes. Of course, only Nevsky until this moment. Getting into it is its Levy campaign, because every turn you first build your armies, levy, and then campaign, do something with them, right? That's the sequence and the name of the series. But the problem is it's hard to know what to choose to build your armies, because you kind of have a supermarket of things that you can buy, if you will, when you've never seen the campaign play out. And so what we did here is the introductory scenario is 2 turns. In other words, levy campaign, finished. And so for the quick start, we just went ahead and jump into the first campaign, having done the levy where you buy stuff. We just did that for you with some typical decisions. And then we also did a little bit of the first part of the campaign, which is to plan your campaign by ordering which lords will move when with some cards. So that's already done. And so we're going to go right into actually doing stuff on the map with armies. You do that for a turn, kind of presumably, if you've never played, you're kind of bumbling around. But then when you get to the first levy that you have to do, you've seen it play out once at least, the campaign. And so you have a little better idea what you might need for the second campaign. And then the game's over.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting idea of twisting the sequence of play and starting mid-turn, because I really feel like a lot of the strategy of the game and getting good and playing well actually comes from being able to planify during the levy phase, but that can be extremely overwhelming as a first player.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to know, never having done the thing, how to prepare for the thing. So that was sort of a flash of, oh wow, we should have done that in the original box. Of course, you learn as you go. So you can now get that quick start downloadable from GMT's Nevsky page. For Almoravid, which is shipping now or about to, same thing. You can go to that page on GMT's site and download the quick start there. For Volume 3, Inferno, which takes place in Italy, it'll be right in the materials in the box, of course.
Yeah, but that's great. So all of the upcoming LNC game will contain this quick start. That's great.
A quick start, yeah, that's the idea.
Okay. And did you think about having a similar idea for other games that you've designed before, like twisting the sequence of play for a coin, for example? Or you think that wouldn't work as well?
I mean, I don't know if it's as necessary, because you start with a certain situation, you jump into here's the first card and the next card coming up, and off you go. So I think it doesn't have that special hurdle of a lot of decisions and options before you really know. In Coin Series, you've kind of got, okay, well, I mean, there's the card and here's my menu of actions. And the approach there to overcoming menu shock is what I call that, where there's just too many options when you don't know enough about the game. The approach that I take there to teach it is to only allow the players the basic commands, the basic ops, whichever first, the left column of the charts. That's all you can do. And you go through the normal sequence of play until everybody's had a chance to just choose do we build troops? Do we move them around? Some basic stuff. Then add the second, column B menu of special activities. And then finally, when everybody's forced to be comfortable with their own menu of actions, then you allow them the events. Because otherwise what happens in Coin, I have found with new players, is there's this overwhelming menu of actions. You don't really know how fit together or advance your position. And you've got this nice event. And well, they wouldn't have put this event in the deck if it wasn't good, so I'm going to play the event. And then it's slower to learn, because you do have to learn the actions menu to play the game.
Yeah. And just for those who are wondering, so you said that you can download the quick start scenario from GMT, but I also added it in the description. So if you're looking for it, you can find it there. And I guess we can jump into it. And I'm going to add to the stream Vassal, because some of you sometimes ask what we're playing on, and we're playing on Vassal. And for those of you who've already played Nevsky on Vassal, you might find that it's a bit different from before, and that's because it's the latest version of Vassal, of the Nevsky module. Can you tell us maybe a bit more, Volko, about the small changes that were implemented?
the electronic game design was Brian Reynolds. Happens to have an interest in improving Vassal. So he's been working to make both the basic engine better and also produce some really snazzy modules. And the first that he did, I'm thrilled to say, is Almoravid. So once Almoravid ships, which is imminent, that will be available. And then he went back and up-tooled the Nevsky module that we already had to this. And so for example, something you couldn't do before is, let me just go into my own Vassal screen here. If we look at the Bishop of Dorpat here, if you pick up a mat, it just carries all the pieces. Well, you used to not be able to do that at all. And there's many others, a lot of other functionality in terms of what you can do in a more automated way. You can muster your lords and vassals in an automated way and so forth. So it's really a state-of-the-art for Vassal. And it just happens that Levy Campaign series, Nevsky and Almoravid get the first two really juiced up modules.
Yeah, but that's great, and the new modules really look amazing. So it's there, like I would say, over the course of the last year or so, there has been quite a few interesting improvements in what you can see on Vassal. I think that's a great change. Shall we get into it and start with the rule teach, Volko? Do you feel ready for that?
I recommend that we do.
Yeah. One note just before we start, it might happen. It would be surprising, but it might be possible that there were some rules that are unclear or some small mistakes that might happen during play. If it does happen, I recommend that you activate the Klingon subtitles, because I will add in Klingon subtitles every clarification or every small correction that might come up. And it's a good thing to remember. Everyone makes mistakes. That's totally fine. And even the designers, and I would say even more so than anyone else, the designers often make mistakes. And we had a few examples on this show of designers making mistakes on their own game. So it's totally normal. And activate the Klingon subtitles.
Fred, I'm so glad you said that, because if you hadn't, I was going to say the same thing. Because one challenge for the designer in this case is that this is the first volume of a series, and we have so many projects. And of course, we learn as we go, we improve the core mechanics, and we adjust the mechanics to the setting. And so I happen to have been spending the last few months in 13th century Tuscany for Inferno. And so I have to kind of remember and readjust back to the beginning for me. So I apologize in advance to the viewers for any confusion from my memory lapses.
No worries. So let's go.
All right. So out of the sense that listening to somebody list a whole bunch of rules before doing anything is one of the poorer ways to learn a board game, I like to just kind of describe what we're looking at, what it means, what its significance is, what some of the symbology is, if you will, and then talk about what each side is trying to do to win, and then kind of stumble ahead. And I'll, of course, offer advice as we go. So the game, as you can see, is set in the Baltic region. We're looking at about maybe 200 or so square miles of ground, the Baltic frontier in the 13th century. And on the left of the map, the territory has been recently colonized by Teutons and Danes. And on the right of the map, we have the territory that is beholden to the great Russian trading center of Novgorod. And what's happened is, in this particular part of the so-called Northern Crusades, the Catholics have decided to attack the so-called schismatics, the Orthodox Christians, meaning the Russians. And we're going to play in this scenario just the first summer with the Teutons on the attack. So Sam's got the Teutons. He's got more of the muscle, but he also has the tougher mission, because he's got to gain ground, while Fred takes on the Russians to defend the homeland, if you will. The calendar, what you can see on the calendar is, of course, the turn track. It's also the victory point track. But you'll also see these various rectangular markers, and those are service limits. The maneuver armies, we're playing in this system, medieval warfare, is at the operational level, meaning we're not really looking at the strategic affairs of war, peace, nation building, diplomacy, that kind of thing. We're also not really focused on man-to-man or unit tactical combat in battle. Although we have battles, it's not really where most of the main decisions are. The decisions that Fred and Sam are going to have to make have to do with when and where to raise armies and how to raise them, levy, and what to do with the armies themselves, maneuvering them across the countryside, that we call campaign. So lords are the maneuver units, the armies, if you will, and each of these markers along the calendar is very importantly a service limit. That is, these medieval lords kind of sign up, they have an obligation to go fight for a while, and then they have to go back and tend their lands and be rulers and that kind of thing. And these markers just show when we get to that turn, that lord goes home, that army disbands. And those are markers so they move around. You can do things to extend the service of your lords if things are going well or if you pay them. On the other hand, if things are not going well and they're starving or they lose a battle or something, their marker slides left and it shortens their service and they can suddenly disband. So that's just a very important thing to track. Typically up there, we would also have some other lords, some cylinders, like what you see below. You see the Danes at Reval there. You would typically have some of those on the calendar. Those are lords awaiting to be called to action, to be levied to muster. In this case, in this introductory scenario, both sides have already levied all the available lords, so we don't have any of that. Okay, so we've kind of looked at the map, and you can just kind of scan down a little bit if you would. So you can see the various regions and towns and strongholds and so forth. We see the lords, the black lords are the Teutonic ones, the white markers are the Russian ones. The purple pawn that you see in the middle is a papal legate. This crusade is being pushed, supported, authorized, sanctified by Pope Gregory, and his legate in the region is going to have some operational impact. So he's sitting there. Each of those cylinders, so those would be wooden cylinder pieces on the physical game, is a lord, and each of those corresponds to a mat. So if we want to look at the left at Sam's Teutons, we have the 4 lords here, each have their own mat that shows their forces. The units are the gray, silver, and brown pieces are units representing 100 or so guys each. And then they also have on each mat at lower left assets, which might be transport, like carts or boats, might be food, provender, and it might be money, coin, and some other things. But that is sort of stuff that the lord gets to carry along with him as he campaigns. And then the lower right are more service markers that are sort of lower level lords, we call vassals, that are awaiting their lord to levy them, to call them to muster into service. And the result of levying them is they just add more forces. So you can see Herman, who we're looking at right now, he's got 2 vassals that are still ready and waiting, but one of them in the previous levy has already mustered. So you see in the forces area north of the center line of the mat, you'll see that there's another one of those markers, and those 2 units, Johannes von Dohlen, has been added to his forces. So he's got 6 units instead of just 4. The cards that you see kind of tucked underneath the mats these are called arts of war, and they are specialists and other kinds of capabilities that also can be levied and added to the lords. And there are a maximum of 2 per mat, and conveniently that's all that can fit along that bottom edge. So, for example, Herman has got some crossbowmen and some siege artillery that he's going to bring with him. If you scroll down a little bit, there's one other such card I just want to point out here. That's right on the... There you go, William of Modena. And that's also a capability, but it's one that affects the entire side. So we just kind of tuck it under the board edge, which physically that's what you would do. You would just tuck it under your board edge, but here on the vassal module, it happens electronically. The Russians also have a similar setup. If we just want to scan over to see Fred's got his 3 lords here ready to go, and he also has some lords. And if you go down, just scroll down a little bit, there's one special feature the Russians have. So the Novgorod is a republic, and it's ruled by boyars in a council called the Vecha. And so if you move that cursor aside to let the card go down, that box there, the Novgorod Vecha, is just a special kind of Russian feature here, which represents their wealthy trading republic. They get a victory point for showing their independence. That was for kicking Alexander Nevsky out right after he won the Battle of the Neva. So that sort of just happened. So they have a victory point there. And then through the card that's just to the south of that box, the Black Sea Trade, they're going to add a coin every turn. So that the Russians have just an extra little bit of money that they can spend on any lords they want to. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. Of course, there are play aids, and I just want to show you quickly what we're going to be doing in play aid form. So if you go to the top of the Vassal screen, there are all kinds of windows and such, and you'll get to know these symbols, but they bring up different, for example, different play aids. If you go to the one in the center that says Levy and just hit that button.
So I will have just a small problem with that because I'm sharing.
Oh, it's not going to show the.
Yeah, it's not going to show that bit.
Okay, so the play aid there just has step by step, kind of everything we do every time, and so I'm not looking at it because of course
I can visually show it
if you look at it. It looks like there's a lot of fine print, but really. You go through it a few times and it becomes second nature, but it does allow you in the beginning when you're learning, it's very handy. It's just go down the checklist, do that thing, do the next thing. And so we're jumping right to the middle campaign, right? All that stuff at the top we already did. And so with that, what is it that Sam and Fred are trying to do? So you're trying to win on the most victory points, like many board games. Where do the victory points come from? Well, most of the points come from conquering places, conquering enemy places, and the boxes around some of these names that you see are the victory points. One box is one victory point. Two boxes, as at Pskov there in the central south, is two victory points, and so on. In the north, there are some just trade routes. The mouths of the Luka and Neva rivers. Actually, at this time, there's not much else going on there. It's just the mouth of the river, but it represents, whoever's sitting there, represents being able to choke off Novgorod's trade with the Baltic that was so important. So since the Russians have that one victory point in the Novgorod Vech, it is the Teutons that are going to have to take something away from the Russians to win, to gain a point. A second way to earn points besides conquering places is to ravage. So a lot of medieval warfare, as you may know, was not actually fighting big battles and not even besieging places and storming castles and that kind of thing. A lot of it was riding around and wrecking stuff and stealing stuff and burning homes and walking off with livestock and that kind of thing. So in the game, that's ravage. And you can go into the enemy territory and ravage each locale once. And each of those achievements of ravaging an enemy locale gives you a half a victory point. And that's often a lot of the points as well. So those are the two main ways throughout Levy Campaign that you get points. In this scenario only, just to handle the fact that it's so short, there's a third important way, Sam and Fred, that you can gain points. And that is by removing enemy lords. For each time that your opponent has a lord removed for any reason, including a normal disband, because the service time is up, you're going to get a victory point for that. That's only in this scenario, because otherwise, with 2 turns, it's kind of like, oh, devil may care. We'll just push all our lords to the edge, you see. So, if you were playing the full, possibly 16 turn, grand campaign here, you'd start out with the same situation, but you'd be much more cautious about taking good care of your lords that they don't go home too soon. So we just enforce that with a little extra victory. So any questions about anything I've said? I've just talked about kind of what are we looking at, what are the different things we're looking at mean, and what are we trying to do as players?
So maybe a thing that would be good to say in regards to the last point that you mentioned is if a lord goes, your opponent gets a victory point. How can a lord go? I guess that one of those would be losing a battle, but how is the mechanic and how does it interact with what we see on the calendar here?
Right. So the typical way will be because his service time is up. He's reached his service limit or beyond it. And so the way that works is if the turn marker right now is Levy. In fact, I forgot to do this in the setup, but if you go to that Levy marker and just flip it, We actually are done with Levy. We're actually on campaign. That's the turn marker. So it's turn 1. So if the turn marker, Levy or campaign, is ever in the same box at a disband check, which happens at the end of every card and at the beginning of each turn, so very often, then if that service marker is in the same box as the current turn, that lord's going to disband. If the service marker ends up left of the current turn, and that can happen, that lord permanently disbands. It's gone so badly for him that he's like, I'm not even coming back for the rest of the war. Goodbye. So that's the main way. And you mentioned battle. One of the typical results, if you lose a battle and you don't have a nearby stronghold to pull into, that you're retreating from the field and the enemy's chasing after you and hunting you down, and it's very humiliating. A typical result of that is your service marker shifts 1 to 3 boxes left. And so very often lords will lose a battle. They're not going to be completely wiped out in terms of their troops all being gone, but they've just been so badly bruised up that they're done. They're gonna go home and lick their wounds, right? So that's a main way. But the other way that the mechanism by which those markers shift is in effect starvation, lack of supply, because at the end of every card, every kind of move that anybody moves or fights, those lords who moved or fought are going to have to feed their army. They're going to have to consume provender or loot, which is another asset you can obtain, like by ravaging. If they don't have enough to feed their troops, their marker shifts the box. And then there's all kinds of other things that shift the box. So that's the main way that lords are removed. Some other ways that come up less frequently, if you're besieged inside a walled place, a stronghold like the city of Pskov, and you lose, right? The enemy storms your stronghold and your lord is inside and loses. There's no way to go. He's out. He's done. And finally, very infrequently, but it is possible to have a lord lose all of his units and to just be a lord but not have any units. In that case, he also is removed.
Good. But that was my only question, but I think it might have been important, for yeah. Good. But then I'm good. I don't know, Sam, if you have any question at this stage either.
I'm ready.
You're ready?
So you have both equipped your armies and are ready to go on campaign. The first thing that would happen usually on campaign is you would select a number of command cards and order them in a face-down stack of your choice called the plan. And the number of cards is equal to the season. So if you look up at the calendar, in summertime, the days are long, the bees are buzzing, the climate is nice, the breezes are gentle on the Baltic and all that. So we get 6 cards. Come winter, it's going to be 4 cards because things get a little harsher in terms of the weather. So 6 cards, and of those 6 cards, a maximum of 3 cards are going to be for any one lord. Each lord in the game comes with 3 command cards. And you would select these, which has been done for you by the quick start. So you should each go to your card window, which is, I guess it's not going to show up for the viewers, but if you go to the upper left, there are a little bit to the left of where the cursor is, right there. Yeah, you can see that the Russian, that's Fred's screen. He can go in there, and Sam can go into the Teuton, and you'll see first card, second card, third card, all the way to 6th card. You should already be selected for you. And there's a little button in Vassal that Brian has put in there for us that just says send plan to deck. And so you can see what order your lords are going to move in. I won't reveal it to either of you. And you're going to hit that button and it's going to create this plan, this stack of command cards. There's the Teutonic one that we're going to reveal one at a time, alternating Teuton Rus, until the campaign is over. That's going to be the campaign.
And where is that button supposed to?
So you were right there. You were on it. Do you want to go ahead and hit that button? Not that one. Left. Left. The other left. There you go.
Yeah.
That one. That.
The other left. But
the other left.
It doesn't
okay.
not go
Yeah.
in?
I thought it was going to be on top. It's actually at the. Okay. So if I click send plan to deck.
Okay,
right.
You're good to go. Okay, so that's going to be the campaign. It's going to be Teuton command card, Rus command card, Teuton, Rus, back and forth till we're done, and then there'll be some cleanup at the end, and we're on to the next turn. So the first thing we do is the Teutons will flip their first card, and this is going to activate one of their lords. So
that would be draw next card.
Let's try that.
Whoa. Okay.
There it is. All right. So Yaroslav. So all this means, and that number 2 there is his command rating. So the lords have various ratings. They're at the right edge of their mat, but they also appear in various handy places. The command rating is how many actions Yaroslav is going to get to do now. It's also on his piece on the map, and it's like a card shape on his own mat. Okay, so Yaroslav, this is, by the way, why Yaroslav on the Teuton side.
Volko, yeah, I wanted to talk about that just to explain, because Yaroslav is a traitor, and so
now wait a minute.
I was gonna say
I just want to be clear. Yaroslav is the Benedict Arnold. Is the Benedict Arnold of the Rus.
He's got a different shield.
I will get him. I will get him, Sam.
Yes, he's exile of Pskov. So he is a prince. He is a prince of Pskov. At least he believes so. But he is from a competing family to Gavrilo, the current prince sitting in Pskov there, and so. As you realize, in medieval times, everything was a family matter. And so in this case, there are a couple of different dynasties who are competing for control of Pskov, this also well-to-do Russian trading city that is an ally of Novgorod, and that the Teutons historically drove against successfully and conquered in the summer of 1240. So this is our current scenario. It's called Pleskow for Pskov, German for Pskov. Anyway, so Yaroslav just wants his throne back, basically. In Pskov. And that's why he is. It also happens, suspiciously, is also the brother-in-law of the Bishop of Dorpat, sitting a little bit to the north there, Bishop Herman of Dorpat. So again, everything's a family matter, more so than a national matter. So this was actually a kind of a strange moment in which there were these national lines drawn between Teutons and Russians. Most of the time it was more internecine than that. But anyway, crusade can be a crystallizing thing. So what does Yaroslav want to do? So one thing to just point out is that historically, the Teutons got their victory points at this point from the strongholds of Izborsk and Pskov there in the south center. Izborsk is a rather small fort that's quite practical to conquer quickly. Pskov is a little harder and is defended by a lord, Gavrilo. There are other places to go for points, but historically what the Teutons did is first took Izborsk, won a big battle against Gavrilo, killed him actually, it is thought, and then went and conquered Pskov. So that's what they did historically, and you're kind of set up to do that. Bishop Herman has some trebuchets, which are really good at storming, help you storm enemy walls because they're like, siege artillery. And Herman, if you look closely at his piece, it's also on his mat, there's a gold ring. And that ring means he's a marshal. And what marshal means in this system is that he can march with a whole army, kind of at no additional command cost. So one thing you could do with Yaroslav, and maybe some of your other lords if they come up, is mass an army with Herman. That's sort of like, just basically go join Herman for a march on Pskov, or put yourself on the way. You could already reach Izborsk and besiege it. You're at your seat. So the different shield shapes you've probably already seen correspond to the different lords. And those coats of arms, those shield shapes on the map mean a seat, kind of the base of operations of that lord, and they might have several. And so Yaroslav is at his seat, Odempa, that his brother-in-law has given him. And when you're at your seat, you can tax, which is a way to get coin. And coin is really nice because I mentioned disband. What do you use coin for? You pay a lord a coin, and it shifts his service marker 1 to the right to extend his service in time. And that's always handy to have. So that's a number of options. That there are many more, but not overwhelming you. Kind of, what is your, your general mood with what you'd like to do with young?
So I'm feeling. Go for it, Fred.
No, I was about to say, so you basically have two options. Either you can be brave and go by yourself and take Izborsk, which is the right move, or you can be a coward little traitor and go and join Herman. So that's basically your two options. There are two
Right.
options.
I think it would be much more enjoyable to just jump right in and go for Izborsk.
All
So
right.
that's what I don't think it's a wise move, but I think it would be more funny.
Yeah.
So that raises the question then, how do you get somewhere? How do you move?
Right.
And the command for that is march, which you're going to do a lot. And so there's some provisos with march. The simple case is one command and you march to one adjacent space. The proviso is that if you have any provender, that those assets, those yellow assets markers, which represents mainly food, but also horseshoes and nails and arrows and helmets and whatever else the army might need. So basic supplies that are consumable. If you have any of that, you have to carry it with you with transport. And if you're moving along a land connection, then you use a cart.
Which I've got.
And if you're moving along a water connection, you use a boat. Okay. All of this, by the way, is in the summertime. When everything freezes up, it's different. But we don't have to worry about that because it's summertime. So happy days. So you can see that Odenpa, where Yaroslav is sitting there, has a water connection, that white line headed north, and has another a land connection, a roadway or trackway headed north. And then headed east toward Izborsk is also a road or trackway to Kirimpa. So one command would get him to Kirimpa, and you can take his provender with him if he has enough carts. And enough is one provender per cart. If he has no more than one provender per cart, he doesn't need the cart to move himself. He needs the cart to carry the stuff, the provender. The men can march and ride and so forth. They're fine. So he happens to have, if we look at Yaroslav's map, he happens to have a cart and a provender. Perfect. So he can move for one command to Kirimpa, and if he wanted to keep going, a second command, he would arrive at Izborsk with his men, his one cart, and his one provender.
That's what we're going to do.
All right.
Epic.
So you can, on the screen with the cursor, you should be able to move Yaroslav along.
Yep. First move.
And then second move would just be go straight to Izborsk.
Yeah. Second command. Yeah.
Okay, so he arrives at Izborsk and something special happens. There's an enemy there, and that is the Izborsk has a garrison. Even though there's no lord, there are guys there. There are some troops there to defend the place. And as soon as you approach an enemy in that way, you have to decide what happens. In this case, there's obviously no battle because there's no field force out there. But because he has approached an enemy stronghold with a garrison inside, in other words, he immediately must besiege it. And that means you're going to grab, I don't know if you can right-click on him and place siege.
You can right-click and add a Teuton siege marker.
Yeah, so many different cool features that Brian Reynolds has put into this. Okay, so that siege marker means Izborsk is now besieged. Yaroslav is participating in a siege. That can have some important effects. And eventually, that's already one step forward to being able to either starve it out, get it to surrender by siege, or storm it. Either way, you need these siege works, these preparations that you've just begun to do that. So that's great. And he's used both of his two commands. But even if he had more commands, laying siege like that ends your move. You're basically encamping. You're surrounding you're starting to set up your tents and all that around a hostile place. Okay, so his card is done. But at the end of each card, we have a check. And most of the time, there's not a whole lot happening, and that'll be the case here. But just to give you the full thing, it's feed, pay, disband. Feed, pay, disband. Every card, feed, pay, disband. Feed means anybody who moved or fought is going to have to consume food. Pay means if you want to, anybody can use their coin right then to pay somebody, which is handy because they might be about to go home if you don't pay them and you want to pay them. Disband is we check, as I was describing before, the calendar, and if anybody has their markers on or left of the current turn, they disband. So who moved this time?
Yaroslav.
only Yaroslav. So Yaroslav is the only one who has to feed. So feed works this way, and there's a little reminder box of this on the sequence of play chart. Every 6 units cost you 1 provender, rounded up. So Yaroslav, we see he's got a knight's unit, he's got a light horse unit, and he's got a men-at-arms foot unit. So that's 3, rounded up, means Yaroslav consumes 1 provender. So he's only got 1 provender, and so that is now consumed. So that is gone. So go to his mat and just, I don't know, discard or delete or whatever option.
Okay, just remove marker. Okay, I tried to decrease it, but it didn't work. But I removed it.
Yeah,
just
because
fine.
you can increase and decrease when it has a value, so you can go up and down. So you could have 1, 2, 3 provender, but then when you're at 1, you just remove it.
So far, this is almost looking like, Sam, you planned this, because look how smooth that is. You marched right there, you besieged it, you ate, and everything's going just fine.
We're jumping right in. This is exactly how I planned it.
There's no
brilliant.
So you don't no adverse shift. You fed your troops, and they're quite happy. So you could each pay your lords now. There's really not a reason to do that. So let's just skip that. And disband, we do a quick check of the calendar. You'll see that none of the service markers are in the same box as the current turn or left of it. So there's no disband. We're done. So we move on to the first Russian card.
Nice. So draw next card. And that's our good friend Gavrilo that is waiting for you in Pskov. So do you want to narrate my possibilities?
So sure. So some of some of the same possibilities that we already talked about. You could tax. You're at your seat in Pskov. You could tax to stock up on coin for a rainy day. You can also supply or forage to stack up on provender to have more food. You get that during campaign. It's kind of a logistical campaign activity where you're gathering up the grain and putting it in your wagons or in your storerooms or whatever. So you could do that right now. Or you could get more offensive. You could counterattack. You're only 1 away from Yaroslav there. You could march out and attack Yaroslav to relieve the siege of Izborsk right now, for example. And we could have potentially a battle right now. Who knows? Or you could try to go on the offensive somewhere else. Let Pskov and its garrison take care of itself, defend itself, and head out into enemy territory to ravage or conquer something and gain some points on the Teutons that way.
So I have a couple of questions. The first one is, can one lord alone can always start a siege, or does the size of the city has an impact on which siege can be started or not?
So it's a great question. It's the first. One lord can always place that first free siege marker. However, to add additional markers, and you can get up to 4, and it's good to have a lot of them. It takes enough lords to properly surround the place, to blockade it, and that is the number of lords equal to the size of the place. Which, if you look at Pskov, there's a little 3 in a red circle. That means it's going to take 3 Teuton lords to advance, not to start a siege, but to advance a siege. So typically it does take 3 lords to properly take on Pskov. Izborsk is just a little place that only takes 1 lord. So that's not an issue here.
Yeah, so for now, I feel like until Sam manages to regroup Herman and probably Rudolf von Kassel, they are not going to be able to lay siege in Pskov. So Izborsk is going to be probably their focus for now. So as you said, I have an option of either bringing the fight to him, but I know that Pskov is not really at risk, but that's still 1 VP that I could give them, or then I could trade for maybe ravaging some of their land.
Yep.
Then my follow-up
I guess I did leave out one option, and not to hurt your feelings, but another option might be to run away, might be to pull back.
You're hurting my feelings.
Toward Novgorod and unify with Domash, who's back there at Novgorod, to form a larger army that together then can counterattack in the next 40 days. That would be another option.
How could you even suggest that?
That sounds like such a wise choice, Fred. I think you should take that to heart there.
But then my follow-up question is, you said 1 card transports 1 provender. Is there any chance for me to still move 2 provender with a single card?
Yes. So you can move up to twice the provender as you have transport. And that's called moving laden. So laden meaning, you can move, but you're doing some shuttling, you're slow, you're basically overflowing. And beyond that, you can't at all. So if we look at Gavrilo again, so he's got a boat, go a little bit to the right. Yeah, a boat, a cart, a coin you can carry easily. That's no problem. Yeah. 2 provender. So the boat carries 1 provender normally along a waterway or 2 provender laden, and the cart does the same along a roadway or trackway. So Gavrilo is kind of set up here to use either the waterways or the roads to move, but either way, if he takes both provender with him, he's going to move at twice the cost. So 2 commands moves him 1 space. You can always leave excess provender behind if you want to move faster. If Gavrilo had 3 provender and he can only carry 2 even laden, he can dump 1 and take 2 with him laden. Or if he's here 2 and he wants to move faster, he can dump 1 and just take 1 with him and move at normal speed. That's, by the way, you have to have a reason. There's a rule called greed. You can't just dump stuff for no reason, but that's a reason.
Okay, but I feel like so if I moved just from Pskov to Izborsk, I would move laden, so I could bring in those 2 provenders with me.
That's right. And something to point out about Gavrilo, one of his capability cards there at the lower left, Druzhina, this is some fast-moving, sort of full-time soldiers that he has that can lead his army faster, that gives him a +1 command. So I've marked in the setup for you, if you look at his mat. If you move your cursor,
he has
that little 3, that's there just as a reminder. He actually has 3 commands because that's one of the cards that are the Quick Start purchased for him.
That's shifty.
Yeah, so I could actually. So I think what I'm gonna do, and that should be fun. I think I have maybe a bit of time before taking care of my thinking is that Yaroslav doesn't have food anyway, so he cannot continue doing the siege, because if he does, his service marker is going to go to the left, and that's going to be a problem for him. I have more options to myself. I have some coins, I have some provender, and I feel like I can probably slap him later. And what I'm thinking is maybe I could go to I'm a bit worried about Herman, less about Rudolf. So I'm going to take my first command to move by boat down south.
Okay, and so if you're using 1 command to do that,
and I have to drop 1 provender to do that.
Yeah.
So
because that 1 boat is carrying 1 provender at the normal speed rather than twice the cost.
And then I'm going to use my second command to go here. So in Latgalia, and then because I have that option of having the 3rd command because of my capability, I can use another kind of action that you mentioned before, is a ravage action, right? So I could just place a Russian ravage marker here, and that should give me half a point. And I think it appears here. Yeah, I have now 1.5 points. Yeah.
You can lay those ravage markers anywhere?
Only in the opponent country. Yeah.
Yes, let's talk about that. So first of all, it has to be a place that is on the other side of the territorial line, right? The important general territory. And it also has to be a place that you haven't conquered yet, right?
Okay.
And these different command options, march, we've talked about tax and forage, and ravage in this case, siege is another one, and so forth. There's a second player A chart that on 1 page, this is all on a single fold out, by the way, if you get the physical game, but it's at the tab in the vassal module where you have the horse and cart there. It just lists all those options and in summary form how the rule works, right? So ravage, for example, it tells you what you get. You know, the good news, Sam, is he can only do that in that particular spot once, right? It's ravaged, and that's done. He gets a half a VP, as you mentioned, Fred, and as the vassal module already automatically accounted for. And you also get some goodies that you take away from there.
I like goodies.
As spelled on the command chart, if it's a settled place, a town or a stronghold, you get 1 provender and 1 loot talk about loot in a second. This is an emptier area, still more pagan settled, just a region. So you get, I believe, 1 provender only.
Yeah, so I would get 1 provender, so increase it to 2. But
and I'll just say what loot. So loot is representing the stuff you get when you really, wreck a place. It's mainly livestock. So it slows you down. You're always laden with loot. You can eat it. And if you have to, you do eat it like provender. But if you can get it back home, you can use it as a reward to your troops and yourself and your friends. And it actually, like coin, can shift your service limit to the right. Can extend your service just like a coin. Okay, but in this case, he didn't get that. It was just provender. And so that's 3 commands: 1 by boat to Ostrov, 2 by cart to Latgalia, 3 to ravage. He used his extra Druzhina command point there to good effect. The card is over. Feed, pay, disband.
So now I use the provender that I just got, and I go down to 1, and I don't have to pay anyone, so I'm done with my card. And back to you, Sam.
All right, let's see what the next card is. Rudolph. Okay, I didn't want Rudolph to be the next one.
And I think that's one of the really fun aspects of the system.
Yeah, and so if you were playing the quick start, you're looking at the sheet and you're doing this, face to face or with a friend, rather than a teach and play, you'd see what the lords are, and like, okay, they've kind of set me up with a certain plan here. I got to kind of figure out how to make good use of that. Once you're not doing the quick start, once you're playing a regular scenario, of course, you get to decide all of that, and you know it. So here we've kind of saddled you with, okay, there's a certain approach that's kind of baked into the quick start just to get us going.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see. So he has 3 command just straight up. That's pretty good.
Yes, he was leading the most zealous faction of the Teutonic Knights. So he has quite a bit of get up and go break stuff.
He's got 1 provender, 1 cart. So, okay, let me see. So taxing, what is good about taxing?
So taxing adds coin. And coin is lovely because you can carry it around very easily, and you can use it very flexibly to keep your lords, your armies in the field. You can, at very frequent occasions, at the end of every card, actually, in the beginning of the turn, you can pay lords in coin, and 1 coin extends 1 lord's service by 1 box. So it's a great way to keep going. Coin, though, is hard to come by. And one of the main ways that you can get coin is this tax command. And the 2 hitches to tax are, you have to be at your own seat. Rudolph is that. He's the Castellan of Venden, and he's at Venden Castle, so he's there. Right. And 2 is, it takes an entire card. And what it represents is actually very often it was the lords themselves. Maybe it might be their main people who have to ride around the countryside collecting taxes. It's like not like the IRS where people just wire them money, right? So you're actually spending a bunch of time collecting up the coin.
So buy the whole card, that means that would take all of my command if I just did attack.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all Rudolph would do on this card is gain a coin.
I think Rudolph is going to tax this turn.
All right. So then you can actually go to his assets and vassals area of his mat, and I think you can just right click in that area and add coin.
There it is. Place coin. Sweet.
Boom. All right, for a rainy day. And so, so once we get through this campaign, see, you're going to get to make all those decisions of, what to do for the second half of the summer.
I love this game so much.
But for now, you can blame the quick start. So that's nice. Okay, Russians.
So Vladislav. Vladislav is up north. He's protecting the Neva trade
indeed.
hub.
Yeah. So his main mission, a lot of the time, and in this scenario, is to protect that north coast, because there are a couple of points there: the Neva and the Luga, and there are a couple of vulnerable forts, Kaporia and Kybalovo. Who's threatening them? Well, it's the Danes. If you look further down the coast in the west, they actually can sail.
Yeah, they have ships.
And they don't have to march. They can actually sail. And there's some, difficulties to that, but they can do it. So you do have to watch out about that.
So I think what I'm going to do, because he has actually a good command value. He has 3. What I'm thinking is that if I wait in Koporye, I actually can intervene either in Luga or in Neva. When I'm in Neva, I'm a bit like it's going to be longer for me to do anything, and I feel like it gives me more option. So I'm going to use one command to go south and one command to go to Koporye. And I think with my last point, I would like to try an action called forage.
Okay. So, and you will succeed. But first, let's look at your transport situation. You just moved across 2 roads.
Yeah, I didn't see that.
Perfectly legal. However, the boats are not going to help you carry, so you're going to have to leave that preventer behind.
So I'm going to remove the marker.
The boats will catch up with you. Don't worry, they'll rejoin you. And so a little bit of an abstraction here, so for bookkeeping's sake, but they move down the coast presumably. And so now you have your 3rd command, so forage. So forage works like this. Forage is a kind of a handy way to gain some provender almost wherever you are, especially in summer. And it just means you're kind of living off the local economy. You're not going to wreck anything. You're just asking people to give their fair share to the war effort, if you will. And so a single forage command gives you 1 provender if it's legal to do that. And let's say you had 3 commands, you could get 3 provender with 3 forage commands. It's also perfectly acceptable. There are restrictions later in the in other seasons as to where you can forage, and you cannot forage in a ravaged place, right? Because that place has just been wrecked and burned out. But in this case, no problem. He can forage in Koporye. It's summertime. It's a friendly place.
So that makes summer really good because you can forage anywhere in summer.
You can forage anywhere in summer.
As long as it's not ravaged.
Mm-hmm. So later when it becomes winter, you have to be in a friendly stronghold to forage. And there it's stores, right? That's the harvest has been taken in and put in storerooms in a stronghold somewhere. And so if you're outside as the besieger, now you can't forage. You've got to bring the stuff to you. And it gets more difficult. But summer is lovely because the fields are full of grain and the melons are ripe and you just live life.
I just collected a few lemons, and now because I moved, I actually have to spend that provender that I just got.
That's right.
So I added it, and I'm going to remove that marker, and that would be the end of Vladislav activation.
And so we're back to the Teutons.
Okay. Let's see, Herman.
Okay, so let me point something out about the good bishop here. So he's quite zealous and effective. He did most of the campaign leading in this. Actually, not the Teutonic Knights per se, but Bishop Herman. So he's a 3 command. He's a marshal, as I mentioned. There's something else that's special about his situation now, and that he has the papal legate sitting next to him there. So that purple pawn represents this representative of the Pope who is supporting the crusade on Novgorod, if you will. And the legate has a lot of great uses for the Teutons, including during Levy. But what the Quick Start has done for you is left him on the map to help you during your campaign. And he can be used, he can move with Herman if he wants. And at any one point, you can use him to add another command point to that lord. So if you wanted to use, and he won't go away, you'll still have him next turn. But if you wanted to use his 1 turn, now the effect would be that Herman would have 4 commands rather than 3. And the martial aspect, just to remind you, just means he can take lords along with him as he marches. He can pick them up, he can drop them off freely. They just tag along with him at will.
Right. So since that circle, the martial ability, that allows him to be in the same space as another lord, and they move together.
You're always allowed to be in the same space.
Okay.
But it enables him to move together. It enables him to take other lords along with him during a march command.
Okay. So I think I'll use the legate ability and get the extra command this turn.
So then the pawn would just go back to that card at the lower left of the box because you're going to get that legate back again next turn.
Perfect. Okay, so now I have 4 commands. So I have cart, I have provender. My goal here is I would like to get Herman also to Izborsk and join Yaroslav. So should I forage first to have the provender, or should I forage? Yeah, because I couldn't forage in that stronghold.
The problem with foraging first, you can forage even outside Izborsk since it's not ravaged and it's summertime. So kind of easygoing. So you can forage there, but there's a better option, and that's called supply. And that is, rather than living off the local economy, you can send your carts back, in effect, home to your seat and bring stuff in once you get there.
Perfect.
If you were to forage now at Dorpat, you'd have to carry it with you with your 1 cart. That would slow you down. But once you get to Izborsk, looking ahead, and I'll explain how this works once you get there, you actually will have enough carts to supply yourself where you are from your seats. And that's going to be more efficient, as you'll see, than foraging.
All right. So if I just go, it would be 1 command to Eugenia and then another command to Izborsk.
Yes. So you've only used 2 of 4. Now, if you recall, when Yaroslav got to Izborsk, he approached. It was an unbesieged enemy stronghold. He placed the siege marker and he ended his turn. That's called a camp. That's not the case here. Yaroslav has already prepared the ground for Herman. So Herman doesn't place, neither does he place a marker, nor does he have to end his card. He still has 2 commands left. And so since you're interested in bringing up more food, and that's wise, let's look at the supply command. The way that works is you have to have enough transport to form a route back to whatever sources of supply you're using. And the sources of supply you're using here are your seats. And you'll notice that Herman, being a big bishop, has 2 seats, 1 at Dorpat and 1 at Odempa. They're both bases of operations for him.
Got it.
And so if he has enough transport, in this case carts, to reach back, he can actually draw 1 provender from each of those on a single command. And he does have enough carts. He has 1 of his own. But whenever lords are together in the same place, on the same side, they share stuff. They share assets. They're not allowed to move stuff back and forth between the mats, but you count them together. So Yaroslav, being a good brother-in-law, is going to share his cart with Herman, right? Yes. So Herman, in effect, has 2 carts at his disposal, and there are 2 ways back to his seats. And just a footnote, we've refined this rule a little bit in later volumes to make it a little more realistic, but we're playing Nevsky here. That's enough to draw 2 provender, 1 from each of those seats with each supply command.
Perfect. So I would just get +2 provender, and then that would be the turn.
Well, you have 2 commands left.
Oh, my word.
Because of the legate.
Oh, okay. Wait. So do I get...
You could do 1 supply, and then you would still have 1 action. And I guess that action...
Which you could use to supply a second time for another 2 provender. Or you could ravage. You can ravage the land around Izborsk. It gets you points.
I think I would like to ravage.
It prevents the downside to doing that is you can't forage there anymore. Yep. But on the other hand, you've got supplies coming in from
I think ravaging is the right move here. We're going to ravage.
Okay, so with the 4th command.
Sam, to be clear, so you have this guy, Yaroslav, that is supposed to be the rightful heir of Pskov, who comes into his works, and the first decision that he makes is ravage his own land. I'm not really clear on the dynamic here. Can you explain? Can you give some words?
This is Herman right now.
He's selectively ravaging the oligarchs of Pskov. So
true.
That's pretty unclear. I think it's the line is blurry right now. Awful behavior.
Right. And did Vasil award you your half point? It did. Yes, so yours is a 1/2. It's off to the side there because it's like 0 plus a half. There's a sort of invisible 0 box to the left of 1 here on the game board. Okay, and now you get your goodies for ravaging.
Oh yeah.
because you actually do. You wreck stuff, but you actually steal stuff as well.
So, and in this case,
So-
because you're doing it in Izborsk, you should get provender and loot, which I didn't.
Because it's a stronghold, it's a more settled area. Yep.
So place 1 loot, place 1 provender. So I should have. So just to make sure I'm correct, I should have 3 provender
Yeah.
now at the end of this, and then 1 loot.
And what you could do now,
So
instead of
you
having
had
the 3,
you had one at the beginning, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
And so you arrived with 1. You brought it there with your cart.
Mhm.
You supplied with 1 action for 2, 1 from Dorpat and 1 from Odinpa.
Okay, so I should be at 4 provender total.
And
Yeah.
then you got another 1 for the
Right.
Ravage plus the loot.
And I
Right.
would recommend, just maybe for simplicity for you, is instead of having 4, keep 1 and then increase this one to value 4 like this, and then you can delete the others. It would be simpler to track.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Oh, that's super handy.
This mimics the asset markers in the game, in the physical game.
Perfecto.
Exactly. Okay, so there you are. Now, at the end of your card, because you've done 4 commands of your 4 that you
Yes.
had, so it's the end of your card. What?
Food.
We got to do feed.
Yes.
Feed, pay, disband.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
who has to feed?
So
Herman, right?
That's it. Yeah, I mean Yaroslav didn't move. He's just
Yeah.
camped there.
And just to clarify, if Herman, for example, used his action to all of his card in the next turn to do a siege, it will engage Yaroslav with him, right? Or he can decide to run a
Right.
siege on his own. Yeah.
When you siege or storm or battle, it doesn't matter what the lords there do. All the lords are basically participating in that activity. So yes, if you had a siege at Izborsk in the future, both of those lords are going to have to feed their troops.
Okay.
Got
So in
it.
this case, only Herman then.
Okay,
So I'm
only
just
Herman.
gonna only decrease by 1 provender here.
Yep.
You have 6 units. That's just at the maximum. It only costs you 1. And just to
Right.
point out, not that you'd necessarily want to do this, but you could feed them the loot.
Oh.
You could just basically slaughter that livestock and others. So,
Hey, you
so
know what?
why
Why
would
not?
you or wouldn't you? Well, why not? So let's talk about that.
Okay.
Remember that if you get that loot to friendly ground, right, you can distribute it. You can use it to pay instead of coin, which is
Oh,
nice.
right.
To extend service. Well, what's friendly ground? Well, it's everything to the left of the borderline there. But if you conquer Izborsk, it becomes your fort. And you can actually then use the loot there to pay. So one idea might be hang on to the loot. And once you do conquer Izborsk, use it to pay Herman, or for that matter, he can share it with Yaroslav. You could use it to pay Yaroslav and keep him in the fight. The reason you might eat the loot instead of the provender is loot can be hard to move because you're always laden with loot because you're driving these herds of sheep and goats and cattle and whatnot. So it kind of depends on whether you think you're going to be doing a lot of moving around. You don't have a lot of transport anyway at this point in the campaign. So
I think I'm going to go ahead and just eat the provender, and I'm going to hold on to the loot for now.
very good. Okay.
All right.
And presuming that nobody wants to pay anybody now, then there's no disband, we go on to the next card.
Who will come next? Domash, the big Domash.
He's the head of the militia of Novgorod, and he's brought in. In the part of the quick start levy, he actually got mustered from the calendar, as did Rudolph. So he's a reinforcement.
So I have a small problem with Domash, is that Domash really likes food. He has a lot of provender with him, meaning that every move that I will do, if I take those 4 provender, will be laden. So I would be able only to do 1 move per card that I have with him. So I'm actually, and I like his flexibility. He has 2 cards, 2 boats. So maybe I should drop some of this provender and rush to the border. What do you think, Volko? Is this a bad idea, or I should do that?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, we could do a teach and play and give strategy advice, but I think it's just teach and play.
Oh, come on. Oh, my God. So mean. Okay, good. I see how it's going to go. Nice. So I'm dropping 2 provender, that's for sure. And I'm moving. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I think I'm going to take the safest option here that gives me either the option to go to Pskov or to sneak toward Dorpat. So I'm going to do 1 and 2.
And by the way, it might not be obvious, but if you look at these white lines, these white stripes, including along the lake shores, those are water connections. So there's one continuous white stripe from Novgorod to the Shelon River area region that you're in right there.
Oh,
So
actually, here
yeah,
would
so
be
it's
here as
actually,
one
I
move.
mean, you have to think of the rivers in this place in Russia are the highways. So a lot of times it's actually faster to go by water. Yeah.
So that would be a single move actually by boat.
Yes.
And that would be my second move, getting myself pretty close to
Get
Pskov
out of
already.
here.
Pretty nice. Pretty nice.
Oh, sheesh.
Okay, good. But then that's my activation. And because I moved, I need to spend a provender, and I will decrease it by 1. I have a question now, Volko. It might not come up, but I think it could be interesting. What happens if at the end of a turn, one of my lord is in enemy territory?
Okay, so this is a good time to talk about this looking ahead, because it is an important difference that you're pointing to. Recall that when we're done with campaign, we're going to have another levy, and the whole rest of every scenario goes that way: campaign, levy, campaign, levy, 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 so forth. And so levy, to participate in levy uses lords to are doing the levying. So your lords are using a different rating, not their command rating. They're using their lordship, which is kind of their how much say, how much authority and gravitas and resources they have to build an army, to muster forces. And to do that, a lord has to be on friendly ground. So nothing happens to a lord if he's besieging an enemy stronghold or is in an enemy region, as several of your lords are right now during the levy phase. Nothing happens to them. They just don't get to use their lordship to continue to build up forces. And that, of course, especially in early going, which is where we are here, can be very important, because there's a lot of other stuff you'd like to buy, like more carts and boats. Winter's coming, so sooner or later you're going to need some sleds, more vassals to be mustered, and so forth. So one thing that typically during campaign you're going to be looking ahead to is trying to keep as many of your lords, or get as many of your lords on friendly ground as possible for the subsequent levy. And again, friendly ground means on your side of the line, or a place you've conquered, a stronghold that you've conquered. So if the Teutons conquer Izborsk, it's friendly to them and they can levy there.
Good. But then that's the end of my activation, and let's go to Sam to see who's coming up next. Herman again.
Oh, that's awesome. So here's a question I have. So how do I want to get Izborsk? Do I have to storm it in order to take it over?
Great. There are two ways. Storm is one, and surrender by siege is the other. So let's talk about the second one first. As I mentioned, you can use siege actions to build up siege markers to a maximum of 4. But every time you use a siege action, and this is true no matter how many lords you have there, if there's no enemy lord inside, it's just the garrison, they might surrender right there. And what's going to determine that is a die roll equal to or less than the number of siege markers. So the more siege markers you build up, the greater the likelihood that they're going to give in.
Interesting.
So that's surrender. And in a surrender, then what happens if you hit that die roll? Then it becomes yours. It gets conquered markers, you get the victory points, and it's your friendly ground, and the siege is over, and that's it. It's surrender by terms. You're not taking. They're basically saying, okay, treat us nicely, and we'll give up the fort to you, and you agreed. And that's a part, that die roll is kind of like a free part of a siege action. To get an additional siege marker, you're going to have to take siege actions. Before you place a marker, you get the roll anyway. So that might happen. But what if you're in more of a hurry and they don't surrender? Then you have the option to storm, which is a different command. It costs you 1 command action. It ends your card like any fight does, any contact with the enemy does. And you will fight the garrison, and we will fight out a little mini battle, basically, in which the small garrison of Izborsk is going to try to hold out behind its walls. And a hitch for you is that it's really important to prepare a storm with a lot of good siege works, because siege works represent trenches and building the approach, the covered engines to approach the walls and build the scale ladders, maybe undermine the walls or try to burn them. This is a wooden fort here, this force. So the more siege markers you have, the tougher you are in storm. And a part of representing that is you only get as many rounds in a storm, as many rounds to defeat the garrison as there are siege markers. So right here, if you were to storm right now, you could. And you might have enough stuff, and Herman's pretty tough, and Izborsk is not much of a stronghold, right? You might have enough to take it, but you've got one shot, one round. And if you don't, because it's only one siege marker, it's a hasty assault, if you will.
I see.
So what is the garrison of a fort? I think it's just one man-at-arms unit with crossbows. They've got their walls. You'll get a little bit of protection from your one siege works. And Herman, and it's only one lord at a time. You're kind of attacking one narrow section of the wall where you've prepared to scale it.
And just for you to know, Sam, my walls are not as good as yours, so they only protect from 1 to 3, whereas yours protect from 1 to 4. So
these are wooden,
yeah,
wooden walls, and you have trebuchets.
Yeah,
right.
On top of that, so you have good option to succeed.
In a way, Herman has prepared for this day. He's been
waiting for it.
He's got a very good chance of knocking it over quite quickly, which they did.
So, okay. So I kind of just want to storm it, but I don't know if that's just brash.
Well, this is where experience teaches.
So I'm gonna storm Izborsk.
Okay, so let's talk about storm.
Maybe just one thing that you can check if you want, just if you have a doubt, Sam. If you right-click on your pile of command card, you can inspect, and you can, if you don't remember, you can know which lord is going to be activated next. So,
oh, that is so nice to know. Okay.
Yeah, because then you can decide if you want to do something else, if you know that you're going to be able to do the storm before. So, for example, if you know that Gavrilo is going to come up next, maybe you could place another siege marker to give you another round in your future storm that we're going to do.
Oh, that's really smart.
So, yeah, and just something about that. If anybody happens to know the war game Angola, in a beautiful edition by MMP, it's a great game that I love, and I actually more or less lifted these command cards, this plan stack idea from that game Angola. They're called column cards in Angola, but in Angola the rule is you're not allowed to look at your own cards. You set them up and then you have to remember them, and it's actually kind of crazy because you do end up forgetting in the kind of hurly-burly what's in there, but I just don't feel that cruel. I'm elderly. I forget stuff. So I do allow you in Nevsky to check.
Okay. I think
for Angola.
Oh, that's a nice cover.
Yeah. Here it is.
Great design. Absolutely fabulous game.
I think even with my my knowledge of knowing what's coming up, I think that we're going to have to storm Izborsk.
And the chat wants you to storm. Everyone goes nuts.
I'm sure they do.
I think you have a good shot. You have overwhelming forces.
I've got a huge force, right?
So, let's talk quickly about storm. Storm is quicker than siege. Siege, if you wanted to besiege and add another marker, you could do that. It would take your whole card, and then you'd feed. Storm only takes one command, and Herman has 3 commands. As soon as you storm, the combat ends your card. So you want to use those first 2 commands for something else first, if there's anything useful you can do, and then storm on the 3rd command.
I see what you're saying.
And I guess having food is always a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I could do another supply.
Sure.
I might as well.
You can't forage anymore. You can't forage.
No, can't forage.
Do you remember why, Sam?
You're not at your seat.
Do you remember why you cannot forage anymore, Sam?
That would be because it's ravaged.
Yes, you committed crimes.
I did.
That's why because you committed crimes, Sam. This is why.
That's true. That's true. I think I've got a supply for my first action. So could I do the same deal where I have the 2 carts? I'm attached to both Odinpat and Dorpat, which are both my my seats. So I would get 2 provender again.
2 per command.
2 per command.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's 1 for the first command. It only goes up to 4, so I'd have to actually add another.
So you
another
can
one.
clone that marker, I think.
Provender.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, and then I mean, I just don't really feel like I have anything else that I really want to do. So I guess I could just do that again. I would be at 6.
There
No,
you
I'd
go.
be at 7. Yeah, I
7.
mean, that's a
And
lot.
so yeah, so you see what's happening here. You're pretty close to home,
Right.
and you have a lord with a lot of alacrity, you know, who gets stuff done. He's a 3-command lord, and
Mhm.
you can build up that preventer. Now, going somewhere with all that pile of food is a
Yeah,
different.
that's gonna be quite a
Right.
challenge.
Right.
It's gonna
but
be rough.
you know, what's the harm? By the way, there is a possible downside to sitting on a pile of food like that. If a stronger enemy is nearby and chases you off, you only get to take with you what you can carry unladen. So he gets to pick up all that food. But that's not the case here. I'm sure you won't run away.
Is it possible to pass Herman's provender over to Yaroslav, or can I just use it to
No.
feed them while I'm with them?
The latter,
Or
and
neither.
that's covered
Oh, okay.
under greed. That's, yeah,
Got
Herman is, yes, Yaroslav is his brother-in-law, but you know, family only goes so far.
All right. Well, I'm gonna do my first 2 commands, doing the provender, getting a lot of food, and then we're gonna storm this Izborsk right now.
I think you're
Okay.
actually on the verge of creating an economical crisis there with
I think
that
so.
many food overflooding the market. That's
All right.
It feels great.
So storm is, like I said, a mini battle. And whenever we have either a battle or storm, there's kind of 2 options on how to set it up, or array the lords, as we say. One is you can actually slide mats around and face them off against each other to see exactly what forces are shooting at what. Or you can not bother with all that and use a storm mat. There's a little mat that comes in the game where you can actually take the cylinders. You can mark the space with a storm or battle marker if you want, so we don't forget that we're doing this at Izborsk. And you'd put the participating lords. Yaroslav's going to participate, but he's going to be in a backup role called reserve, because, as I said, only 1 lord storms at a time. So I think with this simple battle, I would like to do it on the storm mat, but I don't know if it's going to show up
Yeah, the problem
on
is that
your stream.
it's not going to show up, unfortunately.
So maybe we should go ahead and do it north of the Herman mat.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so there's room there. So Herman is going to be fighting. Yaroslav, conveniently, is just behind him in reserve. So
Yep.
actually, we're the Yaroslav mat, and we'll just ignore Knut, Abel, and Rudolf for now. And north of Herman is going to be imaginary, the wall, if you will. And a good news for you is Herman is protected by the siege works. They're like a wall. So I usually take the siege markers involved and I just move them in front of the mat, just as a representation of, just as a reminder that you're going to get to those walls. There you go. That you're going to get those walls as a benefit. Then we're going to look on the strongholds table, and it's going to show us that a fort, the little fort like Izborsk, is going to give you, I think, 1 man-at-arms. So
Yeah.
we're going to have to get from the pool 1. So the units here, the wedges are horse units, and the bars or bricks are foot units. The the knights tended to charge in a wedge formation in this era. And the color kind of tells you what kind they are. These are armored men-at-arms, and because they're a garrison, they automatically have crossbows. So that's just stuff on the chart, or that you tend to remember. That's the garrison. And we'll just have to remember that garrison is defended by walls of 1 to 3 wooden walls, as Fred mentioned. But because of your trebuchets, their walls are actually -1. You're wrecking their walls with your catapults, your trebuchets, technically.
So
Your
I would
siege
only
artillery.
defend on 1 to 2, right?
Exactly. And it's only going to be 1 round. If that unit, that garrison, survives 1 round of fighting with Herman, that's it. Storm is over. And if you storm again on a later turn, that garrison is there again, right? Regardless of losses takes. But you should be
Right.
able to do that with normal odds here. Okay.
Perfect.
So the storm goes like this. The defender gets their archery, the attacker gets their archery, the defender gets their melee, the attacker gets their melee done. So we'll do the garrison's archery first. And they, as I said, have crossbows. In Nevsky, crossbows work like this. They're going to get an archery shot. It's times at a half, but they're rounded up. So 1 times a half, 1/2 rounds up to 1. They're going to get 1 shot at you. It's got to get past your siege works. And the way you do that is you're going to roll, and it's if you roll the wall's value or less, in this case it's 1 or less, a 1, the siege works protected you from the crossbow bolts.
So if Sam had 3 siege markers on his siege, I would have to do 4 or more to give a hit, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you can see for
Got
a
it.
really tough target, and Izborsk is not that. A lot of siege markers, you can have walls 1 to 4 for the attackers, because that represents not just the protection that you've gotten from digging trenches and mines and things, but also the degree to which you've degraded his protection. So it kind of helps that even out, if you will. Okay, so you're going to roll a die just to see if your siege works stop the crossbow. Okay, they did it.
Success.
So now you have to absorb a crossbow hit with your troops. And a special rule in terms of Storm is that you have to pick armored units first. All your units are armored, so you can pick any you want. And their armor values are, again, on the forces table. The knights are 1 to 4. Those are the silver wedge shape. The steel wedge shape sergeants there are 1 to 3. And all your men at arms, who are your crossbowmen, are also 1 to 3. You're going to get to pick one of those, and they're going to have to roll a protection, their armor, against this crossbow. And if they fail, they rout. They're going to slide down on the mat and be out of the battle. And because it's crossbows, their armor is -2. What does that mean in practice? In effect, if you pick a knight, they're going to fail on anything but a 1 or 2. If you pick anybody else, they're going to fail on anything but a 1.
Interesting. All right. Well, I guess I will go. I will go with the knight.
Okay, so one of the knights is going to try to take this hit. So you roll a die. Their armor is usually a 4, but because crossbows are -2, it's only a 2, and so a knight is routed. You just slide him down to the routed section of your mat there. Either of the knight, it doesn't matter.
It's going
Oh,
well.
right
It's
there.
going well. And we actually have in the chat
All right. First-
we have in the chat Stuart Edis Gorman, which is a crossbow expert. So I think he must be super happy right now. Crossbow efficiency. Yes.
There it is. The crossbows scored the first blood. Okay.
That's true.
However, Herman brought crossbowmen with him. You have the Balistarii card there, and
Right.
you'll see that it means that your men at arms, they don't just get their usual melee attack. They also get archery with a -2. And so it's times a half. Archery, if you look on the forces table, is times a half, always times a half in Nevsky. So those three, give you 2 shots, right? And that means Fred now has to roll 2 dice against his walls, which are only 1 to 2. Wooden walls versus trebuchets don't do well.
How the tides have turned.
Ooh, 1 goes through, and that's the only one who goes through. So that's
One
good.
is blocked. Okay. So now his single garrison unit has to now absorb this crossbow hit, and his armor is a 1 to 3. So the armor in this game is always 1 to 4 for the knights and 1 to 3 for every other armored unit. 1 to 3 -2. So he needs to roll a 1 not to rout. And if he routs, that unit is removed from the garrison, and that's his whole garrison. Storm is over. Simple as that.
Oh, oh man!
That was so close.
So I'm going to eliminate that unit. Very sad. Very sad.
And so, as we
great.
expected, Izborsk is not quite tough enough to stand up to Herman with both crossbowmen and trebuchets. And you can already see how useful crossbows were in siege storm situations, right? And indeed they were. That was one of their biggest impacts, at least in the Baltic frontier. Okay, so that's it. Izborsk has fallen. You've conquered it. So what do you do? So you're going to first, let's mark the conquest. There's a conquered marker that's worth a full victory point, and so Izborsk is marked with a black Teuton conquered marker.
There it is.
There it is, and that should have given you a victory point.
Yep.
And there you go. So you are now
1.5.
tied at 1.5 and 1.5. Very good. Okay, so we're charging forward already. Then there's some other results. When you have to storm a place rather than having it surrender by terms, you get to sack it. And that means you steal a bunch of stuff from inside. And it's, in this case, for Nevsky, it's 1 coin, 1 loot, and 1 provender for each of the size ratings of the stronghold. That's 1. So Herman and Yaroslav get to divide up 1 coin, 1 loot, and 1 provender.
Could I just give it all to Yaroslav if I wanted to?
You can, in this case, you can, since he participated in He was in reserve, but he participated in a siege. I think you can. I'm pretty sure the rule is, I'm confused between different versions, but I'm pretty sure the rule is you can just distribute
Reminding
it.
everyone that if there is a mistake, I will add it in Klingon subtitle.
Right.
I'm
So
pretty
one
sure you can
one
get it all
loot, one provender, and then you said one
Coin.
cart?
one coin.
Oh, coin. Ooh. Okay.
Nice, huh?
Cool.
Yeah.
Coin is
Okay,
That
so
was
that's
good.
great. And that ends the card. So now both of those lords fought. So just like marching, they both feed.
Right. Okay. So let's get a decrease here with provender. Decrease here with provender. Oh no, remove. Okay. Cool.
Great. It was quite a turn.
Oh, that felt really good. I knew it. I knew we were gonna take it.
I'm gonna draw my next card, and Gavrilo is here. And I think Gavrilo is a bit annoyed right now.
That's fair.
So he's gonna go south. He's going to ravage.
Oh, please.
And I'm gonna place a Russian ravage marker, gain half a point, and that's gonna be his 2 commands. And this time I ravaged in a smaller. So it's not it's a settled
town,
in
right?
the town,
Yeah. So it's not a stronghold. It's not walled, but it is a settled area. So you are going to get the loot there.
So I'm gonna increase my provender by 1, and then it doesn't want to. Yep. And then I'm gonna place loot here, and because I moved, I'm going to eat the loot, and I'm actually no. I think it's going to be better for me to eat the provender right now.
And that's actually an interesting choice, because he will move slower if he tries to get that loot home. And if you catch him and he has to avoid you, you get the loot, right? Sam, you would pick it up because
Right.
you can't take it with him, because loot is always requires laden movement. So he's perhaps betting here that he's going to be able to march your livestock herds back to Russia. To Rus.
We'll see about
We'll
that.
We will see. Also, quick question. So my routed knight, what happens to him now?
Oh,
Does he
we
stay
forgot
there?
all about that, didn't we? Casualties.
Because I think that they
Thank
can
you
die.
for mentioning that. Usually, that's the opponent's responsibility to ensure that we don't forget the losses.
You're
But I-
very much in
Let me-
line
let me
with
go ahead and just keep my
Joe's
knight.
policy. Joe's policy is that
Yeah.
it's always my fault. Yeah.
No, that's excellent, and my apologies for forgetting that step, because this also lets us talk about another interesting distinction. So typically, after a battle, all of your routed units have a chance of recovering, and they just have to roll their armor again, unmodified, and if they're successful, they're back. So these knights, even once they rout, are more likely to be able to reform their units and recover from battle. However, if it's a storm, this is a particularly bloody business. I mean, this is like climbing up the ladders and fighting up on the ramparts and stuff. So if it's a storm and you were the attacker, which is the case here, you recover only on a roll of 1.
All right. That is not a 1.
Okay, so they are just losses. So they basically are removed back into the pool of units, that 1 knight's piece. And Herman's just a little bit thinner on the ground.
Little weaker. All righty.
But good catch.
And then is it my turn for my next command card? I'm going?
Yep.
All right. We've got Rudolph.
Good old
3
Rudolph.
command. Okay. Let's see what we got here.
And you have a nice target in the south now.
It's true. I don't. So we can just fight like our armies versus our armies, right? Like I could just go and charge.
Absolutely.
I mean, I don't know if that's a good idea. You've got quite a few. Oh, you got kind of weak armor though.
Yeah, so you all of your troops are armored. You only have 3, but they are armored. That's one
Yeah,
thing.
they're all armored.
Whereas if you look at Gavrilo, he has 2 armored, but then all the rest is militia. And militia is not great.
Yeah.
He does, however, have archers.
Yes.
Okay. So the archer distinction is only the card, right? There's nothing of the pieces that I could tell that there's archers.
That's right. Yeah, there's an exception to that. There's some very special units called Asiatic Horse that are inherently archers, but We don't have any of those here. They might come in. They sometimes come in later in the conflict. So the way it would work is, you could march right up to approach Gavrilo. He will then have the choice whether to stand for battle or not. He can avoid battle. If he avoids battle, he has to move to an adjacent space, or he could withdraw into a stronghold if he had one there. He doesn't. He'd have to move away to an adjacent space, but he only gets to take with him what he can carry unladen. Everything else he drops, and Rudolf would pick up.
And I would also have to pay for having moved that turn?
Absolutely. You would have moved. Avoiding battle counts as movement.
That would be horrible. I would be left in a foreign land without food. That would be pretty bad. Yes.
I mean, I think that I'm just kind of tired of Gavrilo just thinking that he can keep ravaging my lands like this. I feel like Rudolph's just gonna go. I know. I think Rudolph is just he's gonna command into there. So that's one. That's two. We're gonna approach.
And you know what, Sam? I'm gonna stand up and fight because I think this is my rightful land. So,
all right.
I have a feeling you're probably gonna win too. So I just, I'm
not
just
sure. My units are pretty bad, but I have the advantage of the archery, so we'll see.
True.
So we have a field battle, and again, we could just put the cylinders against each other. I mean, it's a very simple array. It's two lords front and center bashing at each other. One could, if one wanted, slide the mats, and you can actually do this in Vassal, and you can turn them around and face against each other, and you could do that. But it's probably easy enough here just to go to them where they are, understanding that they're facing each other and shooting at each other.
Oh, move mine back. Do you want it right here?
No, here is fine. Yeah. So you have we have both of us in the
right.
Yeah,
I just
go.
slid it right over.
Yeah, are you able to flip Gavrilo facing? I'm just curious now with the Vassal module. Can you take? Can you actually rotate him?
Yeah, I'm gonna rotate him.
Look at that.
Like this
is Brian Reynolds.
Go down like this.
Look at that! Wow. Okay, there's the battle array. Very fancy.
Special effects and everything.
All right,
it's insane.
So, by the way, the procedure for all this storm and battle is on its own page of the foldout called the Battle and Storm table. So we're going to just march down that. And the battle is very similar to the storm that we just saw, but there's no limit on the number of rounds. It's, until one side is beaten or concedes. And if you concede, you have to concede one round ahead of time. So a battle always goes at least one round. And then if you've conceded, the other side gets an advantage during the pursuit. So let's get the cursor off of that.
I would just
card.
have one
see the mats.
I would just have one request to the mod developer is that when it's flipped, if the card could stay upright.
So you can read what it is. Yeah. Typically, you would. I don't know. That would make it. Yeah, that would.
I'm not sure, but
that would introduce, I think, some complications. What typically I would do here is I wouldn't have either of them upside down. I would actually have them both sideways facing each other.
That's fair enough. That would be But that's
so he's highlighting that he has the Luchniki, the archers here. Okay, so it's a little. So here's some extra little steps in battle. So first of all, either of you would get to play some event cards if you had any that affected battle. We haven't drawn any event cards yet, just by the nature of the sequence of play. So that's not going to happen. Not an issue here. Then after the lords are arrayed, which is very easy here, both front and center, as I said. Each side, the defender and then the attacker, is going to get to concede the field, meaning guarantee that the pain ends at the end of the next round, right? So right now, Gavrilo could change his mind and say, no, I'm going to concede defeat. I'm presuming that the Russians are not going to do that.
What say you?
I concede nothing.
Nothing.
Oh, okay.
Now Rudolf could say, gee, I was hoping to bluff him into backing away. So I don't want to go too many rounds. So I'm going to concede the field. What do you say, Rudolf?
I concede nothing as well.
Right.
We're sticking in it.
And by the way, this can come up especially if you're playing with an option in the game of hidden mats. So we have these 5-inch mats that hold all the forces. So we also have screens that come in the game. And if you want to play really tense, it's too tense for me. I can't take the stress. You actually can have all the lords on your side behind a screen, and Rudolf wouldn't necessarily know what Gavrilo's got until they show up on the field of battle. So you can see how then you might want to back away.
Ooh, so like a fog of war effect.
It's a fog of war effect. You wouldn't know. Does he have archers? Did he mass more guys?
It makes the game even a bit more in terms of experience, more like Maria with the
Right.
disc and the
Where you don't,
forces.
you don't know.
I love that.
And more
that's
realistic too. But as I say,
Yeah.
for me, just too stressful. Okay, so nobody's conceding. So we're going to go right into the first battle round. And it's like with Storm, the archers, it's kind of speed gets initiative. So the archers go first, then the horse melee, and you both have horse, defender then attacker. The defender has the advantage of choosing the ground and is, better rested and assembled and so forth. So the defender gets the first shot in each of these mini steps. And then finally the foot melee, and that will be the end of that round. And if nobody's conceded and nobody's completely routed, we go to a round 2 and so on. Okay. So defender is Gavrilo, is the Russians. Archers, he has archers. So what are your archer shots? How many are you generating?
I have 4 units that can use the archer capability, and that's divided by 2. So that's 2 archer hits.
Okay. And so the way it works, again, in the Levy Campaign system is you generally get to choose which units that are being hit. The owner gets to choose which units stand in front and take the shot, if you will. And they're just rolling against their protection, in this case, armor. Knights are 4, sergeants and men-at-arms are 3. So you're just going to choose roll by roll and the knight could absorb both those hits and be fine if you wanted. So you can have a single unit as long as it stands.
And this is crossbow too, so I have the -2 also on this one, right?
They are not crossbow, and it's funny you should mention that because it does look like a crossbow, doesn't it? That is the only, as far as I know, error on the cards in this game. That's supposed to be a normal bow. It just
because I was expecting
erratum that we missed.
Yeah,
these are normal archers, so they're not crossbowmen. They're just normal Russian archers.
Ooh.
So it's up to you, Sam, which unit absorbs the first archery hit.
So the best armor is these horses.
Is the knights, though.
The knights, the silver knights. So I think we're gonna hope that the knights can take a crossbow hit here.
It's not a crossbow, it's just a bow, so they should be fine.
Oh, it's just a bow. Okay.
Regular bow, yeah.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, let's do it. The knights are gonna try to take this first hit here.
Go ahead.
So I'm gonna roll.
Success.
No problem. So now you've
that's
got
good. Low number is good.
You need to roll. You need to roll below your armor.
4 lower.
Right.
And so now you have a second one. It could be the same unit or a different unit.
We're gonna do the same unit.
Right.
Boom.
Oh, all right. So that knight unit is routed.
Headshot, Sam. Headshot.
That might be consequential.
That's pretty big. Let's not downplay what just happened here.
I can taste victory right now.
Score 1 for the archers. Okay, now would be the attacker's archery. That would be Rudolph's archers, but he didn't bring any archers with him, right? Because he's just actually recently mustered as a reinforcement, so he doesn't have any archers yet. Okay, so now we go on to horse melee, defender, attacker. So defender, horse melee. And on the chart it tells you how many.
So I have
hits it generates.
I have 2 light horses, so that's going to be divided by 2, so that gives 1 hit, and then I have 1 knight, so that's going to be. Oh, is it? It's a knight, right? That I have.
It is a knight.
Okay, so that's 2 hits, so that's going to be 1 hit for the for the lighter horses, and 2 hits for the knight, so that's going to be 3 hits.
In field battle, not in storm, but in field battle, the knights they're doing their main thing, which is their charge with a couched lance, shock impact of these big destrier horses and all that stuff. So those knights generate 2 melee hits. So that's a total of 3 melee hits. And Rudolph, Sam, you pick which units will absorb these 3 horse melee hits at this time.
So men-at-arms current armor value, they would have to rule
a 3
1
or
to
less.
3.
Yeah.
And same with sergeants.
Correct.
Yeah.
So either way, 1 to 3. But my sergeant will get the next strike if they live.
Exactly.
So I think my men-at-arms will take this first shot.
Fine. Yes. 2 left.
Okay, that's awesome. All right, men-at-arms, you just want to keep holding on for me.
They can do it.
All right, we're gonna do it again.
Oh
my gosh, this is so bad. Oh, You know, things have been better.
No, this is great because it's going to let us illustrate a really
Yes.
useful group of rules.
I
So
did this
keep
to
going.
teach, you
Yeah,
know,
that's right,
obviously,
that's right. This is
obviously.
Yeah.
All right, so you, I think
So
you've
the
got a-
last shot's got to go to the sergeant. So let's see
Yeah.
if
Correct.
the sergeant makes it.
Boom.
Oh, okay. Well,
Okay, so
we're not doing well.
once and the instant during a battle or storm that all of a our lord's units, are routed, that lord is now routed and he is
Okay.
pulled out of the array. He's basically gone. And once all the lords on a side are routed, that battle or storm is over. So this battle is over. The pain has ended. And so now we're going to go to the aftermath, which includes a retreat. So
Right.
Rudolph cannot withdraw into any friendly stronghold. He's in the town of Rositten there. So he has to retreat. He was the attacker. He has to retreat whence he came to one adjacent space. Okay. And if he were not able to carry everything he had with him, his assets like provender and loot, unladen, he would drop whatever he in fact, I think it's worse than that because this was not a conceded retreat, is it?
No, it wasn't conceded. So
Okay. So check
Hey,
the
look.
chart and make sure my memory is correct. But I believe in this kind of retreat, which is not a kind of a careful holding action kind of thing, you didn't concede. You could have, but you
No.
didn't concede.
Hey.
I think that everything but ships is lost because you lose
Okay.
your
yeah,
baggage.
all asset except ships. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
that
so
part,
that's all
prov,
good.
and coin all goes over to Yaroslav. So there is a reason, like in the character in the movie Dr. Strangelove, sometimes you don't want to carry loose change into battle because
Right.
the enemy can end up grabbing it. So that's what happened here.
So
If you had
does that go to
conceded-
Gavrilo?
Yes, it has to
Yeah,
go to
right,
Gavrilo.
right.
He's the only lord there. That's the
All
victor of the
right,
battle.
all
Yeah,
right.
exactly right. So had you conceded, you would have fought that round with a little penalty to do with pursuit, but you would have fought that round and you would have gotten away clean, right? You would have gotten away with that stuff.
Right.
But don't worry, even that might not matter because it's going to get worse. Okay, so now we're going to roll for the losses. Unlike Storm, it's going to be on the normal numbers, right? It's not this times one, one only for scaling the walls. So your knights would recover on a 4 or less and so on.
Okay. So let's do the knights first.
Saved.
They're good.
Nice.
Okay. So they
So you
just go
slide
back.
So
it
he
back
can-
up.
he can go
Yep,
up, yeah.
They just recover right up, back up.
All right. So let's do my sergeant.
Survives.
All good. And let's do my men-at-arms. All
good.
good.
All right. So that's a
So
moment of happiness before
That
further
that feels
tragedy.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah,
That feels-
don't get too comfortable though, because
No.
so I don't think Gavrilo had any losses to check. If memory serves, I don't think he lost.
No, I
any.
didn't get any
We-
loss. And
we
I don't want
ran-
to stress that no losses. I just
Right.
had my guy like shooting a few arrows, and then you completely collapsed, and we're like, "What is happening right now?
we
Like,
don't-
where are
Rud-
those guys going?" We
Rudolph
haven't
was
even started.
extremely moody that morning. I don't know. He just had
All right.
something about him.
So after a retreat,
Man.
not a withdrawal, but if you are defeated and retreated, then whether you concede or not, you take a morale hit for that, in effect, because you just got spanked. You just got chased off the battlefield.
Right.
And to represent that, we're going to shift Rudolph's service marker 1 to 3 boxes left on the calendar, depending on a die roll. 1 or 2 is 1 box, 3 or 4, 2 boxes, 5 or 6, 3 boxes. So
Okay,
roll a
I'm
die,
gonna-
cut it
I'm
in
gonna
half,
roll that.
roll that. Okay.
We got 4, so that's 2.
Right. So if you go up to the calendar, and if Fred, you can scroll your screen up to the calendar so we can see how this works. So Rudolph, you see by his symbol, he's there in box 3. He doesn't have a very long service period. He's going to shift 2 boxes left
Which would be
right there.
ooh.
Okay. Ooh, yes. Interesting. Huh?
That's not looking good.
Not good. It could.
That's
I will
not
say
looking good.
it could be worse, because it would have been worse if you had rolled a 5 or 6, because you would have gone left of box 1 into the 0 box. But in this case, we're there.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And then Well, it is going to get worse. Hold on. Because
Yeah. All right.
then that's kind of the end of the battle.
Volko, just before we keep on, there is a question from Joe here that is
Yeah.
asking if shouldn't the units recover only on the 1 because he didn't concede?
That may be something that I've forgotten. What does it say on the card?
So Lord rotated unit. Each roll, if failed, remove unit. Retreated without conceding, or attacker in storm, roll 1 as if protection 1.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, there you go. So, and this is the idea that if you're being ridden down by the enemy horse because you didn't do a good order retreat, it's pretty hard to reform your units in that situation.
So
either way, I will tell you.
Worse for me.
It does. So either way, I'll tell you, the fate of Rudolph will be the same regardless of these.
He's gonna die.
Did you roll any 1s on your?
The knight.
I
was a 1.
think I only rolled 1-1. So I think the men at arms and then the other is eliminated.
Okay, so they're eliminated.
But your knight is saved. Yeah.
You'll see that it's going to end up. You're going to end up in the same place either way. But thanks, Joe. That's a important distinction. So, so as we can see, battles are very risky. There's not a lot of control. Once you engage over your troops, you're not doing a lot of detailed maneuvers here.
Right.
But you're the one who decided to accept battle most of the time, almost all the time. So you can claim the glory of the results. Okay, so if that is correct, that the battle is now done, we go to feed, pay, disband. So
I have nothing to feed. I have no food.
So if we go back up to the calendar, Fred.
Oh lordy.
All right. So Gavrilo will need to feed, but he, I think, can eat either a loot or a provender, so he's going to be fine. Rudolph has nothing, so his marker is going to shift further left. And whenever you shift in this game off the edge, you kind of go into a 0 box. So we just put it where those enemy lords removed markers are. Okay. And Gavrilo would now eat his. Have you already? I presume, Fred, you've gone ahead and done your feed for Gavrilo.
Not yet. And even if I didn't move, I have to eat.
You fought.
Yeah, I thought that takes a lot of energy. And you know what? It was so much energy that I'm going to eat some meat and I'm going to take the loot. Because now the loot has served its role as bait.
It was the bait. Yes.
Yeah, I can remove it.
Nice. Yes.
Sword
It got me. Rudolph wanted to.
All right. Pay.
Food.
So if Rudolph had kept his coin, or if he was now next to Herman or Yaroslav and they had some coin, they could share that coin. You could pay Rudolph, and for every coin or loot, by the way, you would shift his marker back over 1 to the right and potentially keep him in the game. But none of those are true. There's no way to pay Rudolph. So we're done with pay. You don't have to be in that situation, by the way, to pay. You can pay anytime you want, but there's no real reason to do it in other cases that we're looking at now. So we'll go forward. Okay, feed, pay, disband. So now we check, are there any service markers that are in the same box as the current turner to the left? Yes, Rudolph. If you're in the same box, that's a disband at service limit. And what would happen is Rudolph is out of the campaign, but he's still in the war. You would take his cylinder and you'd put it a number of boxes ahead on the track equal to his service rating of 2. That'd be box 3. And come turn 3, if you were playing that long, Rudolph would again be available to Levy. He could come back.
I see.
In this case, because he's beyond service limit, he took such a hit from this defeat that he's lost his enthusiasm for the whole show.
Take a break.
Right. So he would be permanently removed. He would be out of the game. So his cylinder is off the game board. His mat is set aside. All his stuff is kind of dumped. He's basically out of the scenario.
And may I remind you something about the scenario? If Lord is removed, shouldn't something happen?
You get a victory point.
Yes.
Because we're playing the introductory Pleskau scenario. That's a Russian victory point. And if you want to, you see those little round markers also left of the calendar.
Yeah.
Enemy lords removed. You can use those if you want to record. You could just put that in the current box.
I'm 100% adding that.
Yeah.
It's not just a badge of honor, but the reason for that is in this game in Nevsky, the board state are There is an exception to this that's not obtained in the scenario, but you should be able to kind of reproduce the score from the board state as much as possible, and that marker just helps you do that.
So the physical token, the physical piece of Rudolph, what happened? Does that stay on the board, or where?
Throw it in the box.
All right, so he's back.
If it were at service limit, if it weren't such a severe situation, it would go onto the calendar to show when does he become ready to be levied again. In this case, he's not going to, so all of that can simply be set aside.
Perfecto. All right. Well, that was a really, really bad, sad time.
I think the word you're looking for is instructive.
Instructive. Yes.
Instructive, brutal, but instructive.
I'm gonna draw my next card, and that's Domash. Domash.
Gavrilla's just ravaging lands out here.
I'm just wondering, what's my upcoming card? The last one. Oh, didn't expect that. Interesting. What does Domash has with him? 2 boats, 2 cards. I think that Domash is going to go in Pskov with his first command. And then with his second command, he's going to supply. And to supply, he has to go trace back to Novgorod, which is his only siege, right? He has 2 boats and 2 cards. So that's going to be 1 card and 2 boats. So I can trace back.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to increase my provender by 1. And that would be the end of my command.
And so he would feed.
And then he would feed and decrease back to 1.
And you could have as easily, because it's summertime and you're on friendly ground, you could have as easily foraged right in Pskov as well. For the same.
I didn't want to add too much pressure on the good people of Pskov.
That's very, very kind. So you'll add the pressure on the good people of Novgorod who are far.
It's a massive city.
So just an interesting thing there to mention is notice that you do need to have the right kind of transport on the way, even for supply as well as for March when you're moving provender around. And that's going to change with the seasons. Come winter, the boats and sleds are useless in the snow. It's the boats and the carts. Only sleds are useful in the snow. And so so even for supply, you have to keep in mind what the terrain is.
Good. So that was and now you have your last activation.
So I've got my last activation, which is good old Herman.
Which would have been sad if it was Rudolph.
That would have been really sad. That would have been a wasted card. So would it have just have passed right there? There's nothing,
it counts as a pass.
It just passes. Wow, that would change the flow of quite a bit. Okay, so Herman, I'm thinking we have a few options here. We've done a lot of like very theatric moves. I could do something less theatric, or I could just continue on and what we've been doing. Because theoretically, couldn't I move Herman and Yaroslav together?
You absolutely can, because Herman is a marshal. So when he marches, you have the option. Now you're going to have to feed both of them if they both.
Which I've
but it doesn't cost you any more commands, so they can move. He can move the whole army. So what are you thinking in terms of more or less theatrical?
Well, theatrical, I would think, would be I could just, charge Pskov.
Absolutely. And that would force a decision on Domash as to whether to defend in front of the gates or go ahead and pull inside and become besieged.
And I've got quite a large force, Fred. I just want to let you know. But you do have...
what do you think?
Domash is ready.
What are you thinking might be less theatrical?
I think the less theatrical thing would be to get this loot home on both sides for my... Because I've got 2 loot. I could get back to friendly ground, right?
But actually, it is friendly ground now.
Oh, it's friendly ground because I'm at Isborg now.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the other reason you definitely want to consider staying on friendly ground is we're at the end of the campaign, and the next thing that's going to happen is Levy.
Yes.
And if Herman and Yaroslav are on friendly ground, which they are at your fort of Izborsk, they're going to get to use their lordship to levy, to muster more stuff.
Okay, see, that's just a better move. Yeah. Okay. So I think what I want to do is I want to stick around and I want to do the loot deal. I want to make sure that I can return those for rewards. What is that action called?
So that is pay. That is part of pay that you can do at the end of every card. So for example, and I didn't mention this, so I think fair to let you go back. At the end of the last card, even though we were talking about Domash, and before that it was Gavrilo and Rudolph, at the end of every card, everybody does feed, pay, disband. And pay means an option to pay anybody who's in a position to receive that coin or loot, right? So at the end of the Domash card, you could have said, well, I'm going to take Herman's loot and I'm going to use it to pay right now if Herman has loot or if it's Yaroslav. So you actually already
could have done that.
Yeah, I didn't mention it because I didn't think it was necessary, but just legally, it's very easy to pay people. They will take your stuff if you know,
I see.
wiring them money.
Oh, that is kind of boring. Oh man.
Then you have a.
It doesn't take any actions, by the way. It's just a free thing.
Oh, that's just a thing. Okay.
You have a recommendation in the chat that I would point out, which I think is probably a good idea, is that, well, you want to end up before the end of the year in friendly territory. And there is and Gavrilo is actually in friendly territory for you. So if you went there and beat him, you would still be in a place where you could do, and you have overwhelming force against Gavrilo.
Well, if you beat Gavrilo in the field outside the gates, yes, you will have chased him off. Maybe he's hiding inside the town. Maybe he's run away towards Novgorod, or maybe he's disbanded completely. That's possible. Pskov's garrison is another matter. They're going to resist you until you siege or storm them, just like at Izborsk.
Oh, you're
right.
So that's Domash in Pskov. We're thinking about Gavrilo down south.
Oh, Gavrilo. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I thought you were referring to the fact that Yaroslav has that seat there. Oh, you mean, yes, that's true. You can trap him down there, and the good thing is unfriendly territory. That's absolutely true. Sorry.
Or if less risky option would be actually also to occupy that space to avoid me retreating, because I cannot go back home, because I would have to go back from here, and I would have to lay a siege in Adsel, which I wouldn't be able to do.
So with 3 commands and a marshal, he can even do more than that. He couldn't he drop off Yaroslav and let Galia to prevent a retreat that way, then march to Tolova and down to Rositin to attack. Yeah,
and prevent any retreat.
So so you're saying, so here's the quick question. If
that
I
would
leave,
be theatrical.
That is theatrical. If I leave Izborsk though, is there a way that these can be retaken back by the Rus? Like, could we?
I can make it way.
That's really annoying. But
I think your garrison is in there,
right?
And they're the same as the Russian garrison that was there originally.
So I think I'm going to move 1, and then I'm going. So that's 1 command. And then I'm going to move down 1 here.
So what you could do
that'd be 2, right?
Is move 1,
right,
and then 2, and then 3. Because if you do this, I have no path to retreat. I cannot retreat here if I lose the battle, and I cannot retreat here because this is where you came from.
Oh, I didn't know there was a rule for the where you came from. That's kind of cool.
Unless I'm mistaken, Volko. Yeah.
No, that's correct. Yeah. And if you do that move, we need to look at transport and unlading.
Right. Oh yeah, because I've got a lot going on here. Yeah, let's do that, and let's just look at the transport. I didn't calculate it, but let's figure out what goes on.
So we'll need to scan left there a little, Fred.
Yep. Check the mess that is Herman's overload of food.
Okay. So Herman has a loot. Yaroslav has a loot. So with that alone, they're each automatically laden. So it's going to cost you 2 commands. So if you take the loot with you, you won't be able to do that.
I'll just have to go down. Okay.
And and you don't have to take you can just drop it. You can discard it. Or like I said, and I think it would be fair to let you do this since I didn't really talk about the option earlier. This might have been a case where use the loot to pay them both earlier.
Right. I could have already had them paid with the loot.
Those goods have been distributed right, to the beneficiaries at Isborsk.
Yeah, I think I
Their
would do
service
that.
markers would shift, and off you go.
Okay, let's just say I did that, because that would mean that I could be a little bit more theatrical with this. I mean, we might as
Right.
well,
Yeah.
follow through. So would I be moving these service markers over one to the right?
One to the right to extend their service. And because the lords can share, they can in effect pay each other. You could use both markers on Herman or both markers on Yaroslav, or one on each.
Well, it won't really apply with this particular game, but
Unless Herman loses a battle.
I guess unless they take a battle, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna move Yaroslav 1 over, and then I'm gonna move Herman 1 over as well.
Yeah.
And then I'll
Because
discard
losing
this.
Rudolph is one thing. Losing Herman is
Well, I don't want that to happen.
yeah. But you're
Okay. So now that that's happened, I've moved. I've now commanded down here.
Okay, so now let's talk about Provender. You have
Yes.
a cart each. You're sharing them, so you got a total of 2 carts, and between you, the 2 lords, you've got 6 Provender. 2 carts can take a maximum of 4, double, but then it's laden 2 commands each. So if they're going to go 3 spaces, if Herman's going to go 3 locales in 3 commands, you're only taking 2 Provender with you.
All right, I'm gonna let him retreat, and I'm gonna play it safe. So I'm just gonna go 1 and then 2. So I won't take the third command
So
to move.
okay, so you have 3 commands with Herman. If you
Right.
move laden, meaning
That's gonna cost 2.
that's going to cost 2 to get to the first space and another 2 to get to the second space.
So
You
it's
can't.
still gonna okay.
Yeah.
So if you want to
boy.
get to Gavrilo with Herman, you're only going to be able to move unladen, meaning you're only taking 2 Provender. The rest you're going to leave with the garrison in Eastborsk because you just don't have the transport at this point to carry
Oh
it.
man, I guess we're gonna do that.
Yeah.
So do I just leave the tokens there, just like that?
You just discard them. Yeah.
They
Oh,
disappear.
they're gone.
Yeah, they're gone.
Alright.
Yeah. Because I mean, it's an abstraction away, but we don't want to have too much record keeping this. If the Russians were to attack Eastborsk, it's going to be the same rules. That garrison is going to decide by a different mechanism, the die roll on siege markers, whether to surrender or not. And that part represents how, are they. So, yeah. So, unfortunately, that's just the wastage of war.
We're gonna do it. We grabbed a lot of food, so we're gonna go in there and we're gonna leave that food back.
Populi. All right. So, it looks like we have another battle.
Yep.
Of course, we're just going at it.
My goodness.
And I'm gonna announce
summer.
straight away that I'm conceding that battle.
Okay, so let's let me ask you why you would do that.
Why would I do that? Because I'm not sure I can withhold 2 rounds of battle.
And what happens if you?
And if I don't, when I will have to retreat eventually, when I will get obliterated, I will lose everything, and I would like to keep my coins with me.
But you're not going to be able to retreat.
I can now. If did he move?
Oh, did he?
Yeah, because I had to move.
Oh, but
down.
you didn't have to do that. You didn't have to do that. Now that you.
Because since I got rid of the provender, I could have moved.
You should have done the
just
original
around.
move of going through here,
Right,
instead of going here.
right.
Yeah. So if you do this, I don't concede.
So
then I will fight to
you're
the.
gonna
to the
just have to come at me right now because I had to get rid of all this food to get here. Okay, so you're gonna have to just fight back, Fred.
Good, but then let's fight, and I'm gonna rotate clockwise here, and we can go straight as we did before. I have some archers, so I do 2 hits that you have to absorb, but they are just bows, so you don't have the -2, so you can decide how to absorb those 2 hits.
They're gonna target the knights that Herman has.
Yep.
Just 1 second here. Okay, so first roll, we're good. Second roll, we're good.
And then you have now you have crossbowmen.
I do have crossbowmen.
Yeah, so now that's gonna be pretty painful.
So I have 3, right?
So the crossbowmen it's again times a half.
Yeah.
So times half. Times half.
Yeah. So it's 2 hits, and the crossbowmen are -2 against armored targets. The unarmored targets have a 1, just kind of a base 1, which is the same against crossbows or otherwise. It just doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
So I'm gonna go against those militia guys that will
Your archers,
save.
huh?
Yeah, they already did what they had to do, so I'm gonna roll and see. If they
Not expecting to survive to a second round, then?
No, not really.
Okay.
And both of them are routing, so
All
that's
right.
that. Good.
Okay.
Oh god. Yeah. So and now we go into the cavalry, and cavalry I give you 3 hits.
Okay, so I think that, oh gosh, oh boy, my brain. Oof, it's stressful. It's all stressful. Okay, I think the first one. So my archers, I haven't even shot with my archers yet. No, I did shoot
You
with my
did.
archers.
You just routed.
Yeah.
You
So
routed.
my
Your
first,
archers routed all of his archers.
right. That was pretty good. So my man at arms, my first man at arms is going to try to soak this first hit from you. We made it.
Succeeds.
And then how many more? Just
2 more.
2 more. I'm gonna just do it again.
He succeeds
We're
again.
good, and then one more time.
And he routes.
So the one routes. Okay,
Not bad.
And then you give
that's
me
not too bad.
Then you give me 3 hits, 1 for the knight, 2 for the knights, 1 for the sergeant.
Right.
And I think I'm gonna try to take it on my knight.
It all depends now on Gavrilo's knights. His Drusian knights.
Oh god. 1 hit.
That is
Then
unfortunate.
the 2 other hits are gonna go for the light horses, and 1 retreats and the other 1 stands.
Aha! There we
And
are.
then I have my full soldiers coming in, and that's half a hit rounded up. So that's mean that you have to absorb 1
It's
hit.
actually a full hit. This is the one most unfortunate erratum in the printed materials that
yeah.
chart shows men at arms melee 1/2. They're times1. So there's a PDF you can download from the website. But either way, it's the same in this case.
It could have been.
But it is times1 melee, just to be clear.
All right, it's gonna go for my men at arms here. Oh, they're gone.
Yep.
Dang.
And now you give me 1 hit back that I will try to take on the men at arms, same as you did. And he also retreats.
Okay.
So we would go in second round of battle.
So, right. So if this would have been a case where concede would have made sense, we would end at that round, and it would be a conceded retreat, an orderly retreat, and Gavrilo would get away with his stuff and survive, but he would then suffer the shifts for retreating on the calendar. In this case, there was no concession because there's nowhere for Gavrilo to go, so we go to round 2, and you could now concede at the end of this round. Presumably, I'm presuming neither of you is going to do that. Herman doesn't want to concede, does he?
No, I don't think he should.
No way.
Makes no sense. So we would go back to and if Gavrilo had preserved his archers, he would now have archery, but he decided to have his archers stand in front and take the crossbow bolts. So there's
everyone died, Volko. So at some point they had to go away. So
my crossbows get another strike though.
But I give you 1 strike with the. I give you 1 strike.
His crossbows go first. He's got crossbows.
Right, because I've got a crossbow.
Yeah.
No, wait a minute. I have archery also for the.
Oh yes, of course. Yes. Your horses have archery as well. Yes.
So I give you 1 hit.
Oh. Okay. There it is.
Okay, so you got 1 hit at me. Okay, I'm going to try to soak that with my knights, actually.
Yeah, roll a 6.
4.
Merde!
We're
oh god.
We're good.
And now you give me one.
I give you a shot.
1 hit.
1 hit.
That I save on a 1, so I think that's going to be the end of it. Oh no!
Oh my word!
He stands. And now he actually attacks you back. So it's
horse
a
melee
charge. So a horse melee. So that's 1 hit for you.
This is ridiculous. Why are you even still here?
So
my men at arms are gonna try to soak this hit right here.
Yeah. Oh, they take it.
That's good. We're taking a little bit more losses than I wanted to.
And then it's 3 hits, and I have to roll 3 ones, which is kind of unlikely.
Yeah,
and I roll a 6 straight away, so there's not too much suspense.
That feels good.
All right, and Gavrilo routes and fails to retreat. So I believe that Herman would take all of his assets as spoils for
Yeah.
failure to retreat. Do I have that
I'm
right?
gonna put everything here,
Yummy.
except the boats, right?
Except ships.
Oh yeah. So you would get the boats actually. I'm gonna give you everything.
Yeah.
Here.
So operationally, Gavrilo was kind of hanging out there. And I'm not sure did you give him his third command when he went down there and ravaged?
No, I didn't.
I think you didn't. So one option might have been, if he wanted to go down there and ravage that town, but be in a safer place, perhaps, would be to have used his third command, drop the loot to move on later, and use the third command to come back up north to be ready to retreat back home to Ostrov.
Yeah.
In this case, he kind of took a risk, and the Teutons took advantage of that. All right. So Herman has some losses to check.
Yep. So, okay. So I've got 3 men-at-arms. So I'm going to be rolling for them to see if they survive, right?
That's
Yeah.
right.
But this time you have the full armor rating because you won the battle.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to just do the first one.
He dies.
Gone. Second one.
Survives.
Good. Third one.
He dies.
Gone. Unfortunate.
Yeah.
Lost
So
2.
he's taking some casualties in the campaign, but the good news is Levy is coming up, and he's got other vassals that are ready to join him as long as he's on
Right.
friendly ground, which he is.
I am.
Good. And then what happens to Gavrilo?
He is destroyed, as he was historically.
Because he
Yes.
couldn't retreat. So does that what's the special rule with Lord removal in this? What was that again? I get a victory
You can
point, right?
place
You get a victory
you
point.
can place the counter. That's fine.
You are-
Wonderful.
You are a bloody pair of fellows. Very theatrical.
Very, very much so.
I'm gonna place
Um,
the counter here and
yeah,
increase
there
your
you go.
VP by add 1 VP, so that puts you at 2.5. Good. And did you feed for
No,
the
I've got
Russian
to
battle?
feed
Herman
for
and
my-
Yaroslav.
Right. So I'm going to decrease by 1 with Herman, and then Yaroslav doesn't currently have any food,
Correct. So he
so
would
he's
shift.
going to shift over.
Yep. And he would. And you could, because it's feed pay to spend, he could now spend his coin if he wanted to, kind of cancel that by shifting back over, or he can just sit back at Eastborsk. So it's really up to you.
I'll just have him shift over.
Yeah. Sometimes, like we saw, it's risky to carry the coin around with you because you might lose it to the enemy. On the other hand, it's nice to keep the flexibility of only paying out when you have to. And this is a nice feature of the Novgorod Vech for the Russians. That coin there can pay any Russian lord anywhere as long as the lord is not under siege. It's basically Novgorod's, financial power, in play here. And so that's very flexible and very safe, because the only way that coin ever goes is if Novgorod herself falls.
And
Very nice.
now I will play my last card, and my last card is going to be Domash. And Domash is going to do nothing fancy. He has 2 commands, and he's going to forage twice, and that's going to increase my loot from 1 to 3.
Prevender.
Prevender, yeah. And that would be the end of the campaign phase.
Right. So we have a little bit of cleanup at the end that you can see on the sequence of play sheet. And there's a few steps, including wastage, sort of the friction of war, if you will. So let's go through that sequence. I'm just looking at my own screen. So it's not the end of the scenario. It's not the end of a season. There are some special things that happen sometimes at the end of seasons. So we go to wastage. And this is just things get broken and wear out and rot and so forth. And we want to show a little of that so that we don't have an unrealistic accumulation of assets. Lord by lord, for each of the lords that you have on the map, you're going to look at their mat. And if they have more than one of any flavor of thing, of possession, they have to choose one to lose. And the things are assets and cards. So if we look, for example, let's start with Herman. If we look at Herman, it looks like he's got 3 cards, 3 preventer, 2 coin, and 2 cards. So he definitely
has 3 coins. Yeah.
3 coins?
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder if I am no longer. I was looking at my own vassal screen. I wonder if I'm no longer.
No, it's because
Oh, it's over in the country.
yeah.
Right. Okay, very good. So, point is, he suffers wastage because he doesn't just have one of each. So he just picks any one of those things. He could discard a card. He could get rid of a cart. He could get rid of a preventer.
Just one.
Just one. Yep. Just some wear and tear.
I should probably just get rid of one cart.
Okay.
There we go.
Oh, no.
Remove that. Yeah, that was woo, close one.
And it could have been, I mean, it probably wouldn't have been the coin. It could have been the boat if you're on the eve of winter, boats also. It could have been Provender if you wanted. It could be that you don't need the trebuchets anymore. They were just for his Borsk and you dump that, but it's up to you. So it was a card. Right. Now look at Yaroslav.
Yes. Yaroslav has limited options.
Well,
he doesn't have a double of anything, so you're actually
right.
fine.
He's got one coin and one card. So actually, he's got so little stuff that he doesn't suffer that.
No extra waste. I see.
However, the Danes, even though they didn't do anything, Knud and Abel, they do have 2 ships and 2 Provenders, so they lose something.
I'm going to decrease a ship.
Okay.
Great.
Vladislav is feeling safer. Okay, so now we go to the Russian side.
So Vladislav is fine, and now I have to lose something for Domash, and I would lose a boat.
Okay. And Gavrilo's not actually there. He's
dead.
Right. He's dead.
Somewhere else.
Okay, so that was wastage. That was done. So the next step shows as unstacked lieutenants from service don't apply. All right, if you are holding any cards in your hand, or if you didn't want to have any of your capability cards anymore, you could discard them now voluntarily. This typically doesn't happen, but a reason it might happen is because the capability cards, their upper half that are kind of out of sight and tucked under the mats and the board, they have events on them, and those events start coming up, and you might want to have a chance of drawing a particular event that's applicable or something. So there is a reason sometimes to discard a card, or maybe there's a unique one like trebuchets that you want another lord to be able to levy in the upcoming phase. So there's this option here, typically not used, but there's an option here to dump some cards if you want. Okay, next would be we're done. We go to the next turn, which means the campaign marker flips over to levy, and it's the levy of turn 2, and that's the second half of the game, if you will. We're going to have a levy phase that we would play now, and another campaign, and the scenario's over.
And unfortunately, we'll have to stop the stream now, but maybe we can, what could be interesting, if we find a time, is actually to have a second part of this episode where we do the levy and the second campaign to actually do the second half of the game.
Finish this, you mean?
Yeah, to finish this. If you're interested, because I think it's pretty...
100% interested.
Yeah, cool.
And just on a vassal note, what you would do in that case is you would save this game, and it saves as a vassal type of file called a vsave, VSAV, and you'd have that in. And then the next time we booted up vassal, we would just load that game, and we'd have this exact situation again. Of course,
I'm doing this right now, actually, so you don't have.
I'm also saved. Do we each have to save it, or would I just join a save?
You can also save it as a backup, but
I'll save it.
As long as we have one save, we're good.
Perfect.
Excellent. But maybe just to conclude briefly, because I really have to go, but how did you like the experience, Sam?
Oh, I absolutely loved it. This is probably, I mean, man, it's gonna take a little bit for me to I got to keep playing this, but just from that little bit of experience, going against an actual opponent, that was, I mean, that's probably gonna pass Maria for my favorite of the war games I've played. So it's getting up there.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
I just like the economic aspect of it. It's not so much of it is a battle. I mean, we had a lot of wars going on, but so much of that was the decision.
You guys were very aggressive.
We were doing it. Yeah, we were very aggressive. I was doing a lot of things. I just kind of wanted to push the buttons and kind of see where that was going. But I could see where oh man, I would have changed up a couple of those earlier turns to ensure that I was not wasting all that. The provender. I mean, there's so many other things that I probably could have done a little better, and I think that I love games where I could feel like I actually just did really bad and could do better next time.
Yeah.
And with regard to the quick start, I think you'll find if you were to now start this scenario over again, you would not yet have been stuck with the levy and planning decisions that the quick start imposes on you. But having gone through a campaign, right, you'd be like, okay, I know why I should pick either a cart or a boat, or why I want to have more forces for Herman, or why I want to have archers or not. And you'd also know kind of what can you go out and do. And you'd be thinking ahead, okay, on the first campaign, here are my operational goals. I want to get to East Borsk. I want to do this. I want to do that. And to do that, I'm going to need to have X, Y, and Z. And to do that, not having done what we just did is just really hard. But now you're going to say, now you have the freedom to levy as you like, to execute your own plan.
But let's find a date for a part 2.
I'd love to.
And I would like to say thanks a lot, Sam, for taking the time and playing the game. I think that was really cool to have you here. And Volko, thanks a lot also for teaching us the game. That was really awesome.
Thank you.
And I would like to thank everyone in the chat, because there was a lot of interactions, a lot of tips. It was really fun to watch. So thanks for everyone that was here, and being funny, and also correcting live some of the small mistakes that were made. So that was awesome. And see everyone very soon. And we'll keep you posted on what's the date for the part 2 of Nevsky quick start scenario. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.